I spent a lot of time in the great outdoors. There's the visual beauty. It's just spectacular. There's this whole cycle of life, this beautiful, touching love and care. But at the other side of it, there's this incredible brutality.
Zimbabwe, landlocked in southern Africa. Tourists travel from all over the globe to witness an abundance of wild animals in their natural habitat. Those tourists depend on tough, experienced guides to keep them safe. Guides like Paul Templer.
I grew up at the time the country was called Rhodesia, in the midst of a vicious civil war. So I served in the military for a while. Then I spent some time gallivanting around the globe. And after years of being away from Africa, being dropped back into nature, it was like this incredible love affair. I went and started an apprenticeship to become a guide. We were amongst lions and elephant and buffalo and crocodiles and hippos and snakes and scorpions. There were landmines, rapids. There was any number of things that could go horribly wrong. And if you guided long enough, they would.
Late afternoon, March. Paul prepares for a canoe tour down the majestic Zambezi River, known not only for its wild, untamed beauty, but also for its many dangers, including crocodiles, hippos, and Victoria Falls, one of the 7 wonders of the natural world.
We were getting ready to do what was called the Royal Drift. It's just this incredible canoe trip. You spend about 2 hours or so canoeing down the mighty Zambezi River. Your end point is just above Victoria Falls.
The group sets off. Paul in a canoe with his clients, followed by 2 apprentice tour guides, Evans and Ben. His friend and fellow guide, Mac, rides alone in a small kayak to act as safety should any trouble arise.
Paul was a big guy, big, strong guy, physically imposing. If you were on the river with him or in the bush with him, it was reassuring. He was one of those guys that you knew wasn't going to let you down. He was pretty solid.
As we drifted down the river, a pod of hippos came up ahead of us. But we were close enough, yet far enough for everyone to enjoy the experience. And being a guide and being trained, I knew that looking at where the hippos were and understanding about hippo behavior, I knew that if I followed shallow water around the hippos, I'd be absolutely fine, I'd be safe. And my gut told me that the safe track was to go left. And I followed my gut. So we went left. And I followed the shallow water, and sure enough, I made my way around the hippo to the relative safety of this narrow channel. We just sat there, soaking in all the peace and the tranquility. We were less than a mile above Victoria Falls. The sun was setting, and there was just that beautiful glow that comes at dusk. When suddenly there was just... Unfortunately, I knew that sound all too well. A hippo had hit the back of Evans' canoe.
The mighty hippopotamus is a massive semi-aquatic mammal native to sub-Saharan Africa. It can weigh over 7,000 pounds. Hippos have tusks that can grow up to 20 inches long. Fantastic swimmers, they can stay underwater up to 5 minutes.
Hippos are widely regarded by African wildlife professionals as being one of the most unpredictable large mammal species to encounter in the bush.
Dr. Camille Fridge is a large herbivore ecologist at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa and has been studying hippos in this region for years. Although Paul's group is feeling the full brunt of the hippo strike, these animals don't seek conflict with humans.
A lot of human and hippo wildlife conflict takes place across Africa, but it's not because hippos are actually targeting these people. They're herbivores, they don't want to kill people. It's just because they're both sharing the same resources. Hippos have these super abilities that other mega herbivores in Africa don't have. They have this incredible strength in their body, this incredible ability to run on land at 18 to 20 miles per hour. They have this amazing ability to swim, where they actually porpoise in the water. They run on the bottom of the ground and project themselves off the bottom of the ground and swim like a submarine would through a river.
I turned just in time to see Evans flying through the air before he splashed into the river. And I noticed that there was a female hippo and her calf nearby, where Evans had been knocked into the river. The way the current was flowing, he was going to wash into them, and that would not be good. So I needed to get Evans out. I didn't have time to get my clients out. So I turned my canoe backwards and I back paddled in towards Evans. I was getting pretty close when I saw this wave cruising in towards me. And that's a sign of something large coming at you underwater. And given where we were at, I thought it's either a really big crocodile or it's a hippo. But I knew that if I slapped the river with the blade of my paddle, it would make this loud percussion, this slap. And that was usually enough noise to deter whatever was charging in at you. So I slapped the water, and sure enough, whatever it was stopped because the wave dissipated, and it just kind of bumped the canoe up, and we shook around a little bit. I went back to paddling. Evans was scrambling towards my boat. And the last thing we needed was someone panicky trying to get in a boat, so I needed to calm him down. I calmed him down, positioned my canoe, leant over to grab a hold of him, and as our fingers almost touched, water between us just erupted. Everything just went dark and strangely quiet.
It was important for all of us to get that break from an urban lifestyle and being rushed to being really in nature. It's quiet. It's a great place to just get away, relax, and be at peace.
The Pacific Northwest of the United States, known for its beautiful coastline, lush interior, and spectacular mountain ranges. Deep in the Cascade Mountain region, old-growth forests support a thriving ecosystem. Exactly why nature lover and public servant John Chelmanak comes here for a respite from his busy city life.
I served 16 years on the Bellevue City Council, my last 2 years as the mayor. Being a city councilman takes a lot of time. It was harder to get away, but it was important for my family to be in nature. And we found this piece of property and we built a second home. The property's right next to the Wenatchee-Okanagan National Forest. So you're literally in the forest when you're up there. The whole family liked being there. There were lots of family things to do.
My dad really loved to be outdoors. He would always take me on hikes everywhere, and we'd always go down to the lake. This area is really gorgeous. There's a ton of wildlife, and you'll just see deer everywhere. I do know that there have been scarier animals there in the past, like mountain lions.
Cougar and black bear are in the area, but I think we felt so comfortable and so much at peace there that you would never think that something like an attack would happen.
On a cool Friday in September, John, Megan, his wife Lynn, and their 2 dogs head up to the hideaway in the Cascades, hoping for a peaceful weekend of rest and relaxation.
Pretty normal Friday. We hit a good traffic day. It was very much a normal arrival.
So I'm working with my mom to help clean the cabin and change sheets out, make sure that everything's put away properly. And while me and my mom are doing that, my dad goes and takes both of our dogs on a walk.
It was getting close to 8 o'clock. The sun has set. It's dark out. You need a light to really see. I turned on the headlamp, got the dogs kind of straightened out. We're walking down the driveway. Dogs are kind of spinning at my feet at this point and having a little trouble with them. And I get to the bottom of the driveway, and we took a few steps out onto the roadway. Didn't go very far. And that's when I heard the brush up ahead of me break. It's a very recognizable sound. It's the sound of a large animal going through brush. I froze, the dogs froze. It got our attention. And then, in a split second, this otherworldly exhale comes. It was loud. And what it said to me was I was in trouble. And then I can hear the paws pounding on the pavement. And I know exactly what it is. That's a black bear.
The American black bear, the most common bear in North America, with an estimated 300,000 in the United States alone. Typically found roaming in the forests, mountains, and swamps, they can grow up to 650 pounds. Dr. Ray Wynn Grant, a researcher at UC Santa Barbara, is a large carnivore ecologist and black bear expert.
Black bears eat a lot of things, but people and dogs are not any of them. But black bears have the ability to be incredibly deadly. Their strength often surprises us as humans. Black bears know that they have the jaws and the paws to make some serious damage. Bears can rip logs to shreds in seconds. They can take car doors off. They can rip garage doors to pieces. Bears are very, very capable of using their body to destroy.
We see the bear come into the light. I know immediately we're in trouble. Her snout is down, she's running fast, and she just leaps directly into my chest. I didn't play a lot of football, but it's like that perfect tackle, and everybody goes flying.
Black bears are really, really fast, meaning they can run faster than humans. I mean, over 25 miles per hour. So it is impossible for a human to outrun a black bear.
I'm trying to figure out, in a sense, what's going on, but in a sense, I know exactly what's going on. I've been attacked by a bear. The adrenaline kicks in, the survival instinct clicks in. I know I'm in a horrific fight. I know that it's a fight for my life. I'm just thinking about survival. I go down on the roadway. I'm stunned. I got up off of the ground, and I can hear the bear a little farther away. She starts coming back at me, kind of comes up tall and tries to grab onto me, is going up high. She was scratching at my face, clawing at my face, clawing at my upper body. I can feel that she's biting. I can hear the damage that she's doing to my scalp and my skull. You can just hear it. It's a grinding sound that you hear in your head.
Whether or not a black bear has ever been in an altercation with a human, it definitely instinctually knows that the head is the vital point. Head and neck is where they're best able to honestly make a kill, and they know that. So this attack to the head and neck area was a calculated but also instinctually driven behavior.
All I think of is getting her off of me. I'm right-handed, and I think keep her on your left because you can punch with your right. That's the hardest thing that you can do to her is punch with your right. I punch. I'm trying to hit as hard as I can, pushing as hard as I can to get her off.
When a black bear is on top of you, attacking you, the advice is to fight back. Black bears are usually unaccustomed to being engaged with in a fighting posture. And so our understanding is that if you defend yourself against a black bear, it should retreat and let you go.
I go to the ground, and all of a sudden it's quiet. I don't know where she is. I do know where the dogs are. I reach down, I grab their leashes, and I begin to run back the way I came. The adrenaline is running so high, I'm not feeling anything. That night, I didn't feel pain. That's what it is like to be in a fight for your life. You just don't feel it. I begin to go up the driveway, and all of a sudden, she appears again, comes across the angle of the driveway, and at this point, the bear jumps over the top of the dogs and is covering the dogs. Instinct kicks in. I grab the leashes and I pull as hard as I can, and they come out. I squared off with her again. She's in front of me now. She gets herself as tall as she can, and she hits me on the left side of my face.
One thing that they can do is stand up on their hind legs and use their paws and claws very independently. It allows them to fight almost like a boxer can fight. So while biting and using those canine teeth can be very supportive to a bear's mission to make some damage, those claws are really what they're best able to maneuver.
I can feel the rip. I can feel that she hit me in the eye. There's a flash of light, and I know my left eye is gone.
On the Zambezi River in southern Africa, tour guide Paul Templer finds himself immersed in total darkness and in the mouth of something.
Confused, I'm disorientated. I don't know what's going on. There's this like vice-like grip, and my arms are pinned to my side, and my head is jammed in who knows what. And I can feel this incredible pressure crushing down on my lower back. My mind immediately went to a crocodile. I did not want to be attacked by a crocodile. And if I was inside a crocodile, I was inside a really big crocodile. I was able to move my one hand, and moving my hand around, I could feel the bristles. So at least now I knew where I was. I was up to my waist down the hippo's throat.
This is the skull of a full-grown hippo. So if you can imagine, this hippo came out the water with his jaw probably open at least this much at 150 degrees, plucked Paul out the canoe. Paul's head is probably somewhere in here, and his hips and torso are out here. Paul's a big person. He weighs 200 pounds. For him to fit inside the hippo's mouth, it would have had to be quite a large hippo.
I can feel my head is wedged. It's locked as if it's in a vice. And my shoulders are wedged. I can feel my legs whisking around like I'm being thrashed around in the water. And somehow or other, I managed to stay calm, and I pushed, pulled, wiggled, and nothing. Nothing I did seem to have any effect. And then it must have been the position I was lodged down its throat or something, but the hippo loosened its grip long enough for me to like pull myself out and escape. As I burst to the surface, I came face to face with Evans. We just like stared at each other, and I'm like, we're going to get out of here. Well, the common advice we would give is get away from the canoe. The hippo's going to come back and go for the big object.
Hippos can be extremely territorial. They may have a tendency to attack some things that maybe seem foreign in the habitat, but their eyesight is notoriously kind of not as good as their ears and nose are at smelling and hearing. So when the hippo is underwater, it may be difficult to make out exactly what's around him, and therefore he just attacks anything that startles him or intrudes on his territory.
So I took a few strokes, and it seemed okay. But I got sixth sense, and I turned and I looked back, and Evans was overwhelmed. He was barely staying afloat. So I went back to get a hold of him when I just felt myself yanked underwater. The moment I was able to get my senses, I looked down and I could see the top of his snout just below waist level. And so I knew that I was inside the hippo again.
As John Chelmanak wrestles with the black bear outside his cabin in the Cascade Mountains, his family inside is completely unaware.
So I'm working with my mom, and I noticed that our two dogs are at the back door. They seemed very, very panicked. I let the dogs in, and my mom comments how this is very strange. She wonders where my dad is. And then we hear a noise coming from outside. It was someone calling out for help. And she hears the words bear, and then she recognizes the voice as my dad's.
She's really done a lot of damage at this point. I've lost an eye. I'm acting on instinct. It's in the dark. I'm staggering. I'm having trouble continuing to stand. During this, I don't know if it's ever going to end, but I think the only way it may have ended is with me dead.
My mom tells me to grab her phone and call 911, and I immediately am terrified. I told the 911 operator that I was at our cabin at Lake Wenatchee and that my dad had been attacked by a bear. At that point, she asks me what our address is, Being as I am 11 and it's not our regular home, I had absolutely no idea.
Out in the driveway, the former mayor of Bellevue, Washington is running out of options. He digs deep, knowing this could be the last chance to save himself.
I've been involved in a lot of things in life. I'm not a person who is prone to violence, but it's instinct. I just don't like to lose. When you're in politics, you like to win every vote. So now all of a sudden, she's going for the kill. She got ready to come for one more, and I stepped back, and I came up hard with my knee, and I make a good connection. I can hear a crack. I knew that I had done damage. I knew that she felt it. I had gotten her attention, and I think that put some fright in her. And now, I think she's frightened of me.
Underneath the Zambezi River, Paul Templer is once again trapped in the jaws of a large hippo and fighting for his life.
He would pull me underwater and then spit me out, and then bite again and throw me in the air and catch me. And then I'd go underwater and he would bite rapidly. I just see him coming in with his jaws wide open, and then he like scores this direct hit. And so now my legs are outside one side of his mouth and my arms, head and shoulders outside the other. And I'm trying to like beat on him, and nothing I do has any effect on him. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, I know I can't win this fight. I can only survive it. So my strategy just goes to, I just have to stay alive.
Hippos have these incredible weapons in their mouths, these two canine tusks that can grow the size of your flexed arm, and then the two large pointed incisors in the middle. Because of the massive strength that it has in its jaws, it's able to push these massive tusks through pretty much anything that gets in its mouth. It's just amazing strength.
So the hippo bit onto my arm, and just I watched it as the bones just like shattered and broke, and his tusk pulled back, and I think the medical term is degloved, as the skin just got ripped from my arm. And I just remember this feeling of like, ah! The hippo throws me away again, and then round 3 is he grabs a hold of me and decides, okay, can't break this guy, so we're gonna dive for deep water and we're just gonna sit on the bottom of the river. I can remember laying there, pinned inside the hippo's mouth, its tusks boring through my chest and my stomach, and all I can see is that light and that scenery and my blood mingling with the water. At first, I remember wondering, am I going to bleed to death or am I going to drown? And we lay there for a little bit longer. Then I remember wondering, between the hippo and I, who can hold their breath the longest? I don't know how long we stayed there. I do know that time passes very slowly if you're in the jaws of a submerged hippo. And suddenly the hippo came to the surface, lurched through it, and spat me out yet again. This time when I broke surface, I looked, and there in front of my nose was the front of Mac's little red kayak. I grab a hold of the handle on the boat's nose. The hippo is right behind me.
So I'm busy shouting at him to get his feet up, get his feet up. Because he's a big bloke and he's hanging down in the water, the current is pushing us into the hippo, and I can't back paddle hard enough. And he gets over the top of the kayak, and I manage to then paddle out away from the hippo while it's still attacking him.
The hippo stayed there, and with his threat display with his jaws wide, was letting us know that we're not done.
We got just offshore from the island, but shallow enough that I could jump out the canoe and grab him and pull him up onto the rock. At which point, my kayak paddle floated away.
Once Mac got me to the rock, and they just sat there and stared at me with this look of horror and like disbelief. I could see Ben, I could see Mac. Where's Evans? He's gone, mate. He's gone.
In the Cascade Mountains of Washington State, John Chelmanak seems to have finally stopped the brutal attack of a black bear.
I knew when I made that connection with the knee, I had hurt her in some way. She slowed down after that. And there's this moment of calm. The bear's not attacking. I think that's the point that she decided to go do something else. And she stopped coming after me.
With help from her mother, Megan gives the 911 operator the correct address as they rush out to try and help John.
As we open the side door, we see a figure slowly leaving from the front of the door.
The bear literally went up a retaining wall right by her.
At that point, my mom instructed me to stay inside. She goes out the side door and slammed the door shut.
She came down to me. She says that it looked like my head was caved in. She took off her shirt, she put it over my head. I'm hearing the contact that she has with 911.
There's a bear up here, please help me.
And that started the process of getting an aid unit to me.
Oh God, his head is all bad. His head is dying. Where is the bear now?
I'm thinking the bear is gone, but it's still there. The bear is pacing on the roadway in front of the cabin, just back and forth, kind of working its way closer.
It's not typical to see this type of behavior from black bears. Usually they don't attack at all, and if so, if they are injured in the process, they'll make their own escape to protect themselves. I feel very strongly that there is something about this home, something about this cabin that was super important to the black bear. It somehow felt that it needed the resources available at this property and was willing to do almost anything to defend their access to those resources.
I'm yelling for her to go back inside, but she stays out there until the emergency medical crew can arrive.
After 15 grueling minutes, paramedics arrive on the scene.
First person out of the ambulance yells to his partner, "Don't get stuff out."
We're just gonna load him and go.
I don't have to ask if it's bad. I know it's bad. I know I'm bleeding and hurt badly. I have a sense of feeling how clammy and sticky I am, especially my face, but even my body. And it's hard to believe, but I just did not feel pain during any of this. I'm just thinking, get to the hospital.
On the shores of Africa's Zambezi River, tour guide Paul Templer finally reaches relative safety after repeated attacks by a hippopotamus.
I felt myself starting to panic. My radio, my first aid kit, my gun were all gone. And then I made the mistake of looking at myself. I was a mess. My body was punched so full of holes, I could see why everyone had that dead man walking look as they would take these little glances in my direction. My left arm from the elbow up, it had been crushed to a pulp, and from the elbow down, most of the skin had been pulled off the bones and the bones had been crushed. I tried to move my arms, I couldn't. My left foot looked like someone had tried to beat a hole through it with a hammer.
By the time I've now got him on the shore, he's almost bled out. So with no first aid kit, all I can do is try and stop bleeding as much as possible. So I tore my shirt up and tourniqueted the arm above where all the damage is, and tourniqueted the foot, which had the hole bitten right through it.
Fortunately, at that point, the way the body processes extreme trauma in that kind of situation, I wasn't feeling any pain. But as I'm speaking to Mac, blood starts bubbling out of my mouth, and I know right away that one of the hippo's tusks must have punctured my chest cavity. And I know that's not good, and I know that we need to do something about it quickly.
Basically, his lungs are collapsing because the diaphragms have been punctured. So, yeah, that pushed things up a notch then, because that suddenly becomes very life-threatening. And we didn't really have anything we could use to fix that. The only thing I could think of was we had cling wrap on the snacks, and I put that over the holes in his back to try and get some integrity back into the chest cavity so he could breathe again. It seemed to work. He managed to, the lungs reinflated, and he managed to breathe.
Although they have momentarily escaped the rogue hippopotamus, their current refuge is an isolated strip of land that no vehicle can reach. They are stranded and running out of time.
With the sun setting, we couldn't rely on anyone finding us. And when I evaluated our options, we had 2 canoes left and 1 paddle. So my plan was to leave Mac with the clients and to get Ben to paddle me. We would follow the current, try and get past the hippo, who was still sitting there lurking. And the pain was rising. I'd gone from being in the state where there was no pain to pain was coming in waves. And I kind of felt like I had this moment of choice. It was, should I go or should I stay? Should I just close my eyes and drift off and call it a day? Or should I fight my way through this and stick around? And I remember saying to Mac, hey, Mac, please tell my family I'm sorry and that I love them. It was my great big farewell soliloquy.
So I slapped him and said, no, you're going to have to do that yourself. Shook him around a bit until he woke up a little, and then just said, just hold on, we're just going to get you to the bank.
And with that, he just kicked our canoe out into the current.
I did think that's the last I'm going to see of him. I thought he was going to die on the way out.
Time really slowed down then. I could hear the hippo making its threat sound. Oh, 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 oh. I could feel the boat getting bumped. I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that if the hippo knocked the canoe over, I didn't have anything left in the tank, that I was done.
Understanding the hippo's continued pursuit of Paul's canoe requires a closer look at this specific animal.
I knew that stretch of river probably as well as anyone did.
Until now, Paul's previous encounters with this bull were just close calls.
He was a very, very large rogue male. About 6 months prior to that, I had been leading a canoe safari, and he had actually attacked a boat I was in then, and I'd come face to face with him. In the months that followed, there had been 6 more attacks. Each attack had got a little more intense, a little more intentional, a little more vicious.
With this hippo having these repeated instances of attacks on canoes and boats, do you think that this hippo has actually become comfortable with these types of scenarios where it actually knows that it's winning these interactions? And that becomes a dangerous and potentially rogue hippopotamus, yeah.
Paul's hippo attack may not have been just a case of the wrong place, wrong hippo, and wrong time, but possibly the wrong season as well.
The Zambezi River has deep pools perennially where these hippos can completely submerge themselves. In low flow seasons, it may be more easy to identify hippopods with their backs exposed out of the water. But in high flow, hippos can fully submerge themselves and they can go completely unnoticed, even by extremely experienced guides like Paul, Evans, and Mike. Paul's attack likely took place because nobody had any idea that this hippo was actually there underwater. It was completely submerged, and unknowingly, Paul led his group over the top of this hippo, which led to this attack.
Finally clear of the hippo, Paul's network comes to the rescue.
So my team put out a call that we needed some help, and guides from far and near scrambled and managed to get to Mac and the clients on the rock. And it just so happened that there was a medical air rescue team with a former Army shock trauma specialist working with them on exercise a few minutes away. They came and were able to stabilize me to the degree that we could transfer me to the hospital. But because of all my head, neck, and spinal injuries, extracting me by air wasn't an option. The decision was made that we were going to drive, and the closest hospital with a surgeon who could help me was about 6 hours away. And because of my head, neck, and spinal injuries, they couldn't give me any painkillers. They needed to keep me awake and conscious. The chap who was the paramedic driving the ambulance was also the guy who owned the local pizza restaurant. And I knew I was in real trouble when he told me he'd give me a free pizza if I lived.
Paul makes the long ride to Bulawayo Hospital, arriving 8 hours after the attack.
They wheeled me into the operating room. I remember lying there and hearing all these people talking about how amazing it was I had survived. I was definitely going to lose at least 1 or 2 limbs, and I could feel myself starting to panic. And the doc walks in and he introduced himself, Dr. Ben Rube. I said, hey, doc, I know you're going to do what you got to do, but what do you say you take the minimalist approach, huh? Because his plan, given all my injuries, had been to take off both my arms and the bottom part of one of my legs. He said, but when he heard me talk that way and ask that, he decided, okay. And he went with the way more complicated, way more risky surgery. But as a result of that conversation, I woke up having lost just 1 limb. So The angels were smiling that night.
Severely injured after surviving an attack from a black bear, John Chelmanak is rushed to Seattle's Harborview Medical Center, the only level 1 trauma center in the state.
I went into an emergency surgery. I believe that surgery was 18 hours. They're trying to stop the bleeding, get me pieced back together. They're just trying to keep me alive.
As doctors work to stabilize John's condition, officers from Washington Fish and Wildlife Department are dispatched to locate the offending animal.
When they found her, she was within a few hundred yards of the cabin, just totally out of character for any black bear, from what I understand.
The fact that this black bear stuck around and was so easy to find once the authorities came suggests to me that this really was its home. They had been away from this home for several weeks, which is long enough for a bear to take up some type of residence. The arrival of John and his family that evening into that bear's habitat possibly posed as a threat to the bear. It may have gotten worried that its food resources or whatever it was dependent on were no longer going to be available unless it fought for them.
Whenever there is a bear attack on a person, Washington Fish and Wildlife policy is to track and euthanize the offending animal.
At that point, they did have to euthanize the bear. The game agents came over and visited. They did say that she would probably have not made it through the winter. The bear was a bit emaciated. She was very light. She was at about 150 pounds and should have been more than that. I'm probably lucky that she was 150 pounds because that gave me a chance to be the winner.
Finding out that she was only 150 pounds really makes me think that something was off, either with her body or the ecosystem, and there may have been some level of desperation that also drove this behavior. It still remains a mystery at this point, but something was very, very atypical about this bear.
Although doctors were able to save his life, the injuries to John's face, head, and neck were extensive.
It's my face that is just ripped apart, and there's no way you can hide a face, right? I looked like hell.
As John recovers in the hospital from the black bear attack that nearly killed him, his primary concern is his daughter, Megan.
For a good first week, Lynn kept Megan away.
I remember my mom warning me that my dad was going to look very different than when I last saw him. I remember being extremely nervous, but also really excited to see him. And so I walked over to my dad for probably 30 seconds and left. I went to the bathroom and threw up because I was just so overwhelmed by everything that was happening around me.
18 months and multiple surgeries later, John is fitted with a prosthetic eye and recovers. A detail from the official investigation offers a clue to why the bear made its home there. A bird feeder.
We all love to have animals in our backyard, birds, even squirrels. But when you put the feeders out, you don't think of it as something that will attract an animal that goes wild. There's a reason they call it wildlife. And when you're in their territory, you're in their territory, and you have to respect that.
Part of this respect is knowing how to behave. With black bears, there are a few steps that can save your life.
Day in and day out, people are out in black bear country, recreating and having a safe and wonderful time. But it's important to take the proper precautions. What do you do if you find yourself face to face with a black bear? First of all, don't make eye contact. Eye contact to a bear or any large predator signals that you are prey. Look above its head or below, down at its feet. Also, with a black bear, and a black bear in particular, it is an okay practice to make yourself look big, powerful, and aggressive. If you have a jacket on, take it off and put it above your head to make you look considerably taller. Speak in a low and resonant voice. Yell at it, bark at it, just cause a big disturbance. Make yourself look crazy and aggressive and very, very threatening. Almost all of the time, we'll see black bears retreating as opposed to attacking. And if you have bear spray, which you should, deploy your bear spray as you're backing away slowly. Don't run. They are amazing, magical creatures, but they're also to be feared in a certain capacity.
Very blessed. I'm blessed that my family was there to be able to help me, and I get to experience the rest of Megan's life and all the things that are coming. Family is the driving force. It's amazing.
He was in pretty high spirits, all things considered. For Halloween that year, he had to wear an eye patch. And so he told every single kid that came up to our door that he was a pirate. He was definitely still a hero in my eyes.
Back in Southern Africa, Paul Templer knows he's fortunate.
It was miraculous that I was still alive. With that day, there were a lot of just strange and crazy things that were working in my favor. So, for example, he bit through both my shoulders at one point, and both arms were barely still attached. On the left arm, he had torn the artery. But as he had torn the artery, it had twisted. Arteries are elastic. And as it sucked back in, it had sealed itself. If it hadn't done that, I would have died on the spot. In the back of my head, there was a bite. If it had gone just a teeny, teeny, teeny bit deeper, it would have been done. It would have severed my spine. Scorecard on hippo attack, 38 major bites, and 5 surgeries later, I'm still here.
The fact that Paul survived an attack of that magnitude is partially because he's a very stubborn person. He should have died. The damage that was done to him, he should have died. And just stubborn, basically decided not to and held on.
So before my run-in with that hippopotamus, I'd often dreamt of canoeing the Zambezi River from its source to the sea. So my prosthetist built me a kayak paddle that I could paddle with one arm, and we put a team together. We did the fullest descent at the time. It took us about 3 months to paddle just shy of 1,600 miles. The only reason we didn't complete it was because some rather nasty warlords forced us to skip a stretch of river in Angola. But in Africa at the time, there were a lot of kids stepping on landmines. And with all the publicity I had received and the attention my story had been given, we used that as the publicity stunt to launch a non-profit that would help those kids get limbs. There's this peaceful coexistence that in an ideal world happens. The animals let me bring clients in on safari to show them the splendor and the majesty of the great outdoors. And our part of the bargain is we do what we can to preserve their environment, to take care of them.
Human populations in Africa are growing every year. And therefore, we're seeing more and more impacts by people in these natural places in Africa. In the next few years, hippos are vulnerable to extinction. They're large mammals, so they have very high energy requirements and require a very intact natural ecosystem. There's changes in flow patterns. We're damming rivers, reducing flows in rivers, and then also infringing on hippo habitat by building homes in their ecosystem. Hippos are instinctively defensive in their nature, and potentially the aggression that we're seeing against people is actually people moving into hippo habitat, and it's not hippos changing, it's actually people changing the habitat used by hippos.
We need to give each other the space. We need to give each other the respect. We need to take care of the environment. We need to figure out a way to cohabitate. It doesn't guarantee that things are always going to work out the way that we want to, but it sure does give us a better shot at it.
I've been in the woods my entire life. I'm always thinking about what's around the corner. I've had people ask me, did you think you were going to die? Well, yeah, I thought I was going to die.
Beaverhead National Forest, over 3 million acres of serene natural beauty in southwestern Montana. For years, Forest Service engineer Todd Orr has been exploring these mountains for both work and for pleasure.
My name is Todd Orr. I'm from Ennis, Montana, and I live here in Bozeman. I feel I am a true Montanan. I grew up living the Montana life. I lived in the country. I was fishing and hunting, hiking, camping every weekend with my parents and my brother, and just exploring. You know, we'd wake up in the morning in the summer and I'm heading up the mountain, just trying to find a cave to crawl into or a cliff to climb. Just being outside was my life, daylight to dark. I work for the Forest Service as a trails engineer, and there's a number of mountain ranges up there that I've just spent my life in, and I know every little crook and cranny and canyon and water hole. I'm usually up there at 8,000 or 9,000 feet, and I'm working on trail systems, and just a beautiful place to be, and lots of animals and wildflowers, and you're at the top of the world.
Getting a jump on hunting season, Todd heads out in the pre-dawn hours, scouting for elk.
So it was October 1st, 2016, and I was on the North Fork of Bear Creek in the Madison Valley near Ennis, Montana. I want to get out into the woods and get up as high as possible on top of the mountain to get to the trailhead, and then hiking up in the dark to get to where I think the elk are going to be at 9,000 feet by daylight. And, you know, I have a headlamp on, but it only illuminates 30 feet in front of me, but you're just kind of paying attention and listening. In the mountains here in Montana, you have black bear, grizzly bear, mountain lions. I've got my backpack. I've got bear spray, just in case. I carry a pistol, a few bandages, and just anything that I would need in case of an emergency situation. I'm always making noise as I'm hiking up the trail.
Hey, bear.
Saying, hey, bear, or hey, boo-boo, hey, Yogi Bear, or something like that.
Hey, boo-boo.
If you're back making noise, talking to yourself, something that alerts an animal to your presence, they're usually 99% of the time going to go the other direction or let you pass, and you may not even know that animal is there.
Large carnivore ecologist Dr. Ray Wynn Grant is familiar with the variety of animals inhabiting these woods.
Some of America's biggest animals are the quietest animals: wolves, mountain lions, grizzly bears, black bears, the list goes on. We don't always know exactly what these animals are thinking. Although they have certainly heard Todd's calls and know that he's present, they might not necessarily accept his presence on the landscape, and instead of dashing away, they can see it as a threat.
Hey, bear. Hey, boo-boo.
So I'm hiking up the trail for about 3 or 4 miles in the dark, and right at daylight, I step out into this opening. The sun's not coming up yet, but it's just starting to get light, and I see a sow grizzly bear and 2 cubs, maybe 70, 80 yards out across the meadow in front of me. This was a mature female grizzly, so probably 400 pounds, which is a large bear for this area. I see them, and she sees me at the same time, and she immediately turns and just runs right straight up over the ridge with her cubs and disappears. So I'm thinking, okay, this is a good bear. She doesn't like people. She's gone. I can just wait a minute and I'll head the opposite direction and head up the trail, and I'll never see her again. It was really not a big deal. I wasn't concerned at all. So I kind of waited and like, okay, if she's gone, I took a few steps and I heard a noise, and I remember turning and looking over my left shoulder, and that bear had circled around the mountain and come in behind me to get my wind. She was coming at a full charge straight down the ridge, 35 or 40 miles an hour. Her ears are laid back, the brush is kind of flying in front of her and the grass getting mowed down, and she's just coming wide open at me.
The grizzly bear, an enormous top predator found in the northwestern United States and Canada, reaching over 9 feet tall on its hind legs and capable of taking down large mammals like moose, elk, and bison.
In terms of weight, they are the largest land mammal that we have in the lower 48 states. They are huge. They can be, between 800 and 1,000 pounds at their heaviest, which is truly, truly enormous. And so much of that is muscle and just brute strength. Grizzly bears are typically diurnal, which means they are active in the day and they sleep at night. But their activity does often start in those early morning hours when night is turning into day.
I see her charging down off the hill, and my first thought is it's a bluff charge, because most bears don't attack. Most bears, they're trying to protect themselves or their young or their food source, and they're gonna bluff charge to try to scare you away.
The grizzly bear might just do a bluff charge to see if that will work enough to get the perpetrator out of the area. Whether it's a full charge, whether it's a bluff charge, whether it's a swipe, whether it's a growl, or even sometimes a barking sound, they are signaling, get out of here before I really hurt you.
And so my first thought was, it's a bluff charge, but just in case, and I just automatically kind of went for my bear spray and pulled the bear spray, pulled the safety clip out, and looked back up, and she was already at 30 feet. She had covered that distance just that quick, and she's still coming wide open. And there was no time to even think. I just looked back up and just pulled the trigger on her and gave her a full blast of bear spray. And just her momentum at that speed just carried her right through the bear spray. And all of a sudden there she was. And I just turned my back and went down on my face to protect the back of my neck and my vitals. And she immediately was on top of me.
Although the bear spray probably made an impact to this bear by getting into her respiratory system, it definitely wasn't enough to slow her down or deter her from her mission to be aggressive and get him out of there.
I remember the first bite, the pain was excruciating as they have 1.5 inch canine teeth, and it just buries into my arm, into the muscle. And you can actually hear the muscle like crushing from the bite. And that first bite was so painful.
Grizzly bears are powerful. Their paws, including claws, can be as large as a dinner plate. So they're able to take these swipes very easily. Their teeth have these long fangs. I mean, just huge, huge, powerful jaws and teeth that can crush bone with a single bite. Grizzly bears are very, very serious, very dangerous animals. And although it's not a good idea for us to completely fear them, it's essential for us to respect their power.
At that point, your adrenaline kicks in and that will to survive, and I just kind of blocked out the rest of the pain. And I remember she bit me 5 or 6 times in my right arm and shoulder, and then she started coughing from the bear spray, and just that quick, she was gone, and it was over. So I stood up, and I've got some puncture wounds in my arm. I'm kind of looking around like, is she gone? And the adrenaline's still surging through my body. And I'm thinking, wow, I was lucky to survive a grizzly attack. And I'm looking like, okay, nothing is too major here. So I kind of looked around and made sure that bear was gone. And I'm like, okay, I feel safe now. I'm gonna head out, hike down out of here, about 3-4 miles to the truck. So I picked up my stuff, started hiking down the trail. And I probably made it 300 or 400 yards, a few minutes down the trail. And there's a creek crossing there, and I had to walk through the creek. And I was just about to the water's edge. The stream's pretty noisy, and all of a sudden I thought I heard something behind me, and I turned and just to look over my shoulder, and the bear had come back a second time, and she was probably 10 feet behind me at that moment at a full charge.
I love surfing so much. I just enjoy being out on the water, not thinking about anything below me or around me, but the more time you spend in the water, the higher risk you have.
Santa Monica, California, one of the most popular beach destinations in the world. We're a small metropolitan city butts up against the vast, wild Pacific Ocean. Tourists and locals alike recreate along its shores year-round. People like college student Sophia Robb, who's out on her surfboard every chance she gets.
It was my first semester in college, just a couple months in. I was pretty hooked on surfing at the time. All day long, I was thinking about the waves. When I was in class, I was checking the surf reports, and I always had my surfboard in my car ready to go. That day, I believe it was a Wednesday, Sophia texted me, told me that she was going out surfing.
I happened to be at a friend's house that had a surfboard, so I asked him if I could borrow it and texted her and was like, yeah, I'll meet you out there.
I was really excited because it was the first time that I was gonna get to surf with one of my new close girlfriends. And my mom gives me a call, warns me of all the dangers. She doesn't enjoy the fact that I love surfing so much and sees it as a big risk, and never failed to warn me about the, wild animals that are in the water and whatnot, but that doesn't faze me.
Sophia and Jessica rendezvous at Sunset Point, a narrow, rock-strewn beach popular with local surfers.
Sophia's super excited. I pull my phone out. We're taking some Snapchat videos, scanning the beach, dancing around, holding our boards, super excited to get out and go surf.
We come down the rocks a little bit, and then once we get about halfway, we put on our leashes, and then we both paddled out.
This particular day, it wasn't a super crazy day with the waves. The water was a little murky. You definitely couldn't see past your knees when you were sitting on your board looking into the water. And so we're hanging out, laughing, kind of paddling. I'm not catching a ton, but I'm able to paddle into some stuff, and it feels really awesome.
It just feels so good. I'm able to get wave after wave after wave. And it's so much fun. It was probably the best day out at that break I've ever had.
We were out there for probably an hour. And at this point, we're getting kind of hungry.
And I tell Jessica, hey, I think I'm gonna catch, the last one in. And I feel like I had a inkling that was a weird thing to say, because you're not supposed to say I'm catching the last wave in, because it may be your last wave ever. But see a nice wave coming in, and it's super glassy and smooth, and it's just the perfect height. And I paddle in and I hop in on it, and it was the best wave that I had caught all day. I'm probably 20, 25 yards from the cliff where I'm about to get out of the water. And then it felt like I came in contact with something. And I do remember that jolt. Instantly was thrown off my board. And as I hit the water, I kind of just thought I was dying.
Deep in the Montana wilderness and battered from a grizzly bear attack, trail engineer Todd Orr sees the 400-pound mama bear charging once again.
I had bear spray in my hand, actually, my pistol right here, and I didn't even have time to use it. It was just corner of my eye, see the bear, boom. She knocks me right down into the dirt, onto my face, and she's on top of my back, and she is mad this time.
Angry grizzly bear, maybe 400 pounds minimum, barreling at Todd at 20, 30, 35 miles an hour. That impact to his body would be like a vehicle hitting him on the road, maybe even at highway speeds. It would be so destructive.
I was kind of crunched down with my arms behind the back of my neck, protecting my neck and my vitals. And her first bite was in my left arm, and it just crunched all the way into the bone, and I heard the crunch of the bone and felt that pain. And I just kind of winced from the pain, and I went, oh, and I pulled my arm away. And that motion and sound just kind of triggered like a frenzy. And she just went wild at that point. She was biting me in the shoulders and the back. She'd pick me up and she'd shake me back and forth and toss me and throw me 20 feet to the side. I was just a rag doll.
A second bear attack is incredibly rare and calls for an explanation.
Creeks and water sources are super important for bears. They need water, they need food, they need all of these things. So it could be the fact that Todd hasn't yet gotten past this creek is signaling to the bear that he is still within her territory that she wants to protect. Maybe before she was sending a signal, but this time she is angry. My perception is that she's angry that he's still there. She's angry that he hasn't vanished from the landscape. She's angry that she's still having to defend herself, and instead of giving that warning message, she is feeling that she needs to eliminate the intruder altogether. This is a very scary situation because given the behavior and the severity of this attack, It appears as if this grizzly bear is willing to kill.
She would throw me into the dirt and I would immediately go face down and she would just jump right on top of me again. Just that quick, she's on my back again. And she'd pick me up and shake me again. At one point, she had reached around and grabbed me in the side. And I remember just out of the corner of my eye, kind of under my arm, we saw each other. I had that glimpse into her eye from like 8 inches away, knowing that right there she could just rip my face off. With 3-inch claws and the teeth that they have, they could turn you into just shredded meat. They can rip you to pieces and kill you instantly if necessary.
Back in Santa Monica, surfer Sophia Robb is caught underneath the whitewater after being struck by something. She struggles to get her bearings.
It feels like I'm looking at a interstellar screensaver, is basically like this 3D realm that I'm entering, and everything around me is like, it looks like outer space. It's like navy blue and dark purple and little stars everywhere. And I don't know, it was definitely one of those like white light moments that I hear, you know, people have when they do have near-death experiences. And then at that moment, I hear this voice. It sounds a lot like me, but it feels like it's God, and it's like, I think this is it. And I thought to myself, like, no, this is not it. And so I, you know, kind of snapped to, and I'm standing in the water, and my first realization is that my board is just like floating off over there, which is very odd because I have my strap on, and it's like second nature for me to pop off my board and grab it immediately. And I'm, you know, standing about waist deep in water, and the waves rush back, and I look down, and my whole leg is just like peeled open, and my insides are falling out, and I just start screaming.
There's just like a blood-curdling scream, and my first thought, I think there's a jellyfish. There's something stuck on her leg that's either stinging her, causing her some pain.
Dr. Camila Caceres is a local marine biologist who's familiar with what lurks in the waters of Santa Monica Bay.
There is a wide variety of animals in the Santa Monica Bay. There are a lot of invertebrates, so you can see jellyfish, sea urchins, sea stars. You can have many fish, bass, croakers, and quite a few species of stingray and sharks as well.
Whatever struck Sophia, it doesn't seem like a jellyfish.
I look down, and I have a massive gash in my leg, and my insides, all of my fat and my material is falling out, kind of just hanging off of this one piece. And it's so gory that that's how I know how serious it is.
At this point, Sophia and I are the only two in the water, and I'm looking closer, meanwhile thinking I still have to get in. You know, there's all these thoughts going through, everything kind of stops.
While Jessica struggles to reach her friend, Sophia searches the shoreline, desperate for help.
I see a couple people standing up on PCH. I'm screaming like, somebody help me, please. But they kind of just pulled out their phones and started, I don't know, maybe filming me or something. I'm not quite sure. And at that point, I realized that no one's, you know, gonna be able to help me, and I have to save myself.
Trapped underneath a 400-pound grizzly bear in the mountains of Montana, Todd Orr is no match for this massive animal.
I knew what I had to do. I had had bear awareness and safety classes. With, you know, some animals, you have to fight back, but with like a grizzly bear, there's nothing you can do about fighting back. I have to play dead, or she's gonna kill me.
It's extremely important to play dead when it comes to a grizzly bear that is this angry. But playing dead is easier said than done. It really means not reacting to any of these bites. Grizzly bears don't eat people. They do not hunt humans. So if a human is playing dead, then it means the threat is over to the grizzly. They are never going to try to then consume the person. That is why it is the best protection mechanism that Todd has at this moment.
The voice in my head is telling me how to survive. I can hear it right now. It's like, don't move, don't move. It's almost like I was talking to myself, telling myself, this is what you have to do. And it's part of my brain forcing my body to ignore and block out everything else. It's like the human body can withstand things that we can't imagine. and your brain can get you through that as well. And it's just a matter of thinking about it, calming yourself down, and focusing on that. So it's just over and over. Don't move. You can get through this. You can survive. This is not the end.
It is interesting and important to bring up the word instinct when evaluating this situation, because Todd is operating from certain instincts. And it's possible and probable that the bear is also. We don't know if she's interacted with people before. We don't know if she's seen people be harmful to grizzly bears before. We don't know if she has experienced an attack to herself or maybe even previous cubs that she has reared before. It is possible that she is reacting so aggressively because of instincts that she's never had to use in the past. Or it's possible that she's operating so aggressively because of an experience, a highly negative experience that she has been through.
She would stand there, sniff the back of my neck, and then bite me in the shoulder. Sniff my neck again, bite me on the arm, and just kind of over and over, and just testing me. And after maybe 30 seconds of that, she just stepped off and disappeared. And I'm still hunkered down in that ball, and I'm like listening. It's like, is she gone? I don't know if she's 10 feet away just watching me. And it's like, if I move, she's going to be right back on me again. So I just held that position for probably 30 seconds. And then all of a sudden I got to thinking, it's like, okay, I think she's gone. And so she's probably checking on her cubs. She had probably sent them up a tree for safety. And if I'm still here and she comes back to see if I'm still in the area, she's gonna attack me a third time.
Trapped in the whitewater with a gaping wound in her left thigh, Sophia Robb is in shock. Her friend Jess is trying to reach her.
I didn't see anyone in my immediate surroundings. I feel like no one could hear me almost. That's kind of that moment that the adrenaline kicks in. And so I put, everything back together as much as I can and just kind of like hold it.
I just stay on the board and I paddle, and I keep my feet as tight on the board as I can. And I just try to keep myself up without letting any appendages down into the water because I don't know what's in there. I have no idea what just did this.
In Santa Monica Bay, few know better what shares the water with surfers than Carlos Gauna, a photographer and drone pilot who helps local scientists observe sea life in this area. He's captured one particular predator many times while filming above the surf.
Well, here in Southern California, we know there are juvenile white sharks in abundance. And what I am seeing is that the white sharks are around us more often than we think. And so as the juvenile white sharks share the water with these swimmers, these surfers, I'm observing a lot of interactions.
So given how long sharks have been around and how many species they are, and the fact that there's also a lot of humans, it's very common for us to find ourselves in the ocean near a shark. And here in Santa Monica specifically, it is considered a juvenile great white shark area.
The great white shark, one of the ocean's top predators, growing over 20 feet long and over 5,000 pounds at their largest. Though adults are primarily deep-sea hunters, 10-foot-long juveniles are found swimming closer to shore.
Usually, juvenile sharks do tend to inhabit shallower areas. So a lot of nurseries are very shallow. They're hanging out looking for food, so smaller prey like octopus, crab, just trying to stay safe away from the larger great white sharks because bigger great white sharks can eat smaller great whites. So if you're a juvenile small great white shark, you're more worried about not getting anything finding your food. It's very common for all juvenile sharks that they tend a little more skittish, nervous, they swim fast. Sometimes they can be a little more aggressive, so show more of those aggressive signs when they're swimming. More larger sharks, they tend to be very calm, they swim very steady.
What I have actually seen with surfers is they don't see the sharks. When you're at surface level, you're basically blind to what's underneath you. And I've got hours of footage of sharks near surfers. You'll get a surfer looking at a wave saying, I'm gonna catch this wave. And then there's a shark right in that wave, and they both essentially catch the wave.
By the time I get to the rocks, I don't really have much more strength. I'm basically just getting beat up against these rocks now.
By the time some man down the beach heard her screams, he runs over and he's helping get Sophia out.
Surf Jesus shows up, literal Surf Jesus, and he has long gray hair, and he comes and grabs me by my arms. He's like, oh, best wave of the day. I'm like, wow, never seen one like that. And I'm just thinking, dude, now's not the time. Like, he was just, you know, talking to me about, you know, where do I usually surf, or what's my, you know, day been like, and just anything to get my mind off of it, really. And it did work. I mean, I can't thank this man enough.
I just want to get out and get to Sophia and make sure she's okay and that we get her help.
Jessica finally makes it out of the water to her friend.
I've never seen anything like this before in my life. I mean, I've seen some like horror movies, but seeing this like in person, I realized it's not a jellyfish. This is the inside of Sophia's leg, hanging down so far with insides hanging out. So, you know, at that point, I ran kind of behind a rock that was up on the beach and I vomited. I puked.
I didn't really question what had happened. I mean, it didn't make sense to me. I spent so much time surfing in the water, and I mean, I've wiped out dozens of times, and like I'd never even come close to something like this happening.
At this time, we're not questioning what did it. We just want to get her help because she's not okay.
Deep in the Montana woods, Todd Orr survives a second grizzly attack and can only hope the bear retreats.
I thought, I got to get out of here. I doubt I'm going to survive a third attack. Still hunkered in this position. My eyes are full of blood and extremely slow. I reached my hand up and wiped the blood from my eye and looked that way, and I wiped the blood from this eye and looked to the left, and there was no bear. And I saw my pistol laying over there. She had ripped that off my body. So I just dove for the pistol, pulled it out of the holster, hammer back, looking around just in case. She was gone. She'd gone back over to the ridge to her cubs. And so I'm like, okay, I got to get out of here. Now's my chance to remove myself from this situation. This arm was worthless. It was broke and kind of all hunked over from the muscle and tendon damage. And I just headed on down the mountain, down the trail.
Todd begins the 3-mile trek back to the trailhead where his truck is parked.
I knew that I shouldn't run because I wasn't sure at that moment what my wounds were, so I didn't want to get my heart rate going any faster and cause more bleeding. Plus, if the bear was up on the hill watching me or something, and the last thing you want to do is run because that triggers the predator-prey response.
You can be fast, but you'll never be faster than a grizzly bear. So turning and running also sends a signal, I am prey. That's what a deer would do, an antelope, a gazelle, any kind of animal that is prey to a carnivore will try to run. The best thing to do is not incite a chase, because that does send the wrong signal that you may be prey.
So I was just walking fast down the trail and just wanted to get as far away as I could from that situation. And as the adrenaline's wearing off, the pain is coming on significantly. I stopped probably halfway down. I'm like, I need to stop, you know, and assess my wounds and just make sure that I'm not going to bleed to death before I get to the truck. She probably bit me 25, 30 times on my right arm and shoulder. I've already got broken arm and tendons sticking out and muscle damage and puncture wounds, and bit me once in the side. And then there was one of her claws caught the side of my scalp, and I had a 5-inch gash right to the bone on my scalp, and my scalp was hanging over. My whole arm was kind of crunched over from the nerve damage, and it's just throbbing like it's in a vice. But I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna bleed out, I'm not gonna go into shock, so I just need to keep going. And that was my focus, was get to the truck and then I'll be 100% safe. At that point, every step farther down the trail closer to the truck was like, I'm getting that much closer to getting out of this situation. All of a sudden, it occurred to me that this is right at daylight where the most animals are active, and there's lots of bears in this area, and there's a possibility I could run into another bear on the hike out. So all of a sudden I was thinking, oh geez, I don't know what's in front of me the next 2 miles. And so I'm still talking and paying attention, and I've got bear spray in one hand and a pistol tucked under here, and I'm dripping blood all over going, I just don't want to go through this again. If I run into another bear, this is going to be insane, and I'm just hoping that this was it and I can make it to that truck.
Back on the beach in Southern California, First responders arrive on the scene to treat the mysterious gash that split Sophia Robb's left thigh wide open.
I think when 911 showed up is when the lifeguards were coming down. And from their perspective, they didn't see anything.
It felt like everything was just happening in slow motion. And I'm just sitting here with my leg gashed open, like covered and filled with sand.
She's crying because she's scared. We're all scared, rightfully so. You know, she's asking questions like, am I gonna lose my leg?
Up until that point, I honestly thought that I was either going to die and or my life would be significantly altered and just not the same. And I was really nervous about that.
Paramedics load Sophia into an ambulance. Meanwhile, Jessica documents the unfolding situation.
You guys, Sophia's leg just got torn open. Homegirl got a laceration that's like this long to her bone. I'm going to the hospital to see her.
Once I finally made it to the hospital, in terms of pain, I was higher than a 10. It was the worst pain I had ever been in. I currently have a gash in my leg about 4.5 inches deep and 6 inches long and 4 inches wide. The nurses came in and I just remember them saying, like, you are one of the luckiest people we've ever seen because we could see your femoral artery, like, visibly. And if this had happened even just a centimeter over, you would have bled out in a second.
Sophia undergoes emergency surgery to close up the laceration, but how it got there is still unknown. Emergency room physicians assume she hit a rock or the fin of her surfboard could be the cause.
The skeg of her surfboard, one of the fins, had been broken off. So we're like, okay, well, she lost a piece of the board. This just must have been what did it. The fin that broke somehow cut her. But it's awfully deep, and when you look at the fin, it just doesn't make sense.
But the more scenarios they consider, the greater the mystery grows.
Measured her laceration, it's 10 by 10. 10 by 10. And that's not even the depth.
But we weren't thinking about the mystery of what did it as much as like, how do we heal her? How does she walk again?
By the time I got to the vehicle, it was just like, okay, I'm not gonna have any more encounters. The bears are behind me. And it was a relief. It was just like, I'm safe, I survived this. I'm gonna have surgery, I'm gonna go to the hospital, but I'm alive. Surviving a grizzly bear attack twice, this is an amazing thing.
The odds are very low of surviving a double grizzly bear attack. Again, they're good at killing. They are made to be as aggressive as they deem necessary. And the fact that he was able to survive this, not once, but twice, is so incredible.
And I got to thinking that I need to warn people of this aggressive sow grizzly with cubs up this trail. It's Saturday morning, to be a bow hunter or a hiker come up here and decide to hike this morning. And so I thought, well, I'll write a note and stick it on the bulletin board at the trailhead. You know, get out a little sticky note and a pen, and I'm trying to write something, and the blood is dripping off my fingers. And so it's like, it just wasn't legible at all. I'm like, okay, that's not gonna work. So I took a couple photos of my arm and myself, and then I thought, well, I'll just do a quick selfie video to just share with my friends. Yeah, life sucks in bear country. She got my head good. I don't know what's under my hat. My ear, my arm. Pieces of stuff hanging out. I don't know what's going on in there. And then my shoulder, it's ripped up. I think my arm's broke, but legs are good. Internal organs are good. Eyes are good. I just walked out 3 miles and I go to the hospital. I pulled into the emergency entrance at the hospital, and there was a doctor and a nurse and a sheriff's officer standing out there. And I couldn't get my truck into park. All the puncture wounds in my arm were just, everything was all stiff, and I just couldn't even lift my arm. And the sheriff's officer came over. So he's helping me get out, and he's like, I'm surprised you took the time to put a seatbelt on. And I was like, well, I just survived 2 bear attacks. I don't want to die in a car wreck. And I walked into the entrance into the hospital, and everybody in the hospital had heard about, here comes a grizzly attack survivor. And so all the nurses and all the staff were all lined up kind of in the hallway. It was like, I'm walking down through, I'm being paraded into the hospital, and everybody's looking to see how bad I look. So I'm sitting there and they're asking questions and I'm just smiling. I think in some of my photos, they picture of the side of my head with my scalp all hanging over, and you can see I'm smiling in the photo. I'm just happy to have survived this.
At Santa Monica Hospital, surfer Sophia Robb wakes from an emergency surgery repairing the mysterious wound inflicted on her earlier that day.
And she's
Just got done. After that, they immediately just kind of stuck me in a wheelchair and like gave me my prescriptions.
Jessica.
Finally on my way out.
We never really got a diagnosis from a doctor or a nurse or anyone in the emergency room that day of what muscles were torn, what the recovery time was like. We were kind of in the dark on what to do.
Jessica just like Googled the top orthopedic doctors in the area, and Dr. Mandelbaum was like the first name, and I saw him that Friday.
I'm Dr. Bert Mandelbaum. My day job is an orthopedic surgeon taking care of knees in athletes. I actually was a marine biology major.
I go to his office and I come in and there's just like all these photos of him diving with sharks. And he's like got a shark tie on.
As the physician responsible for Sophia's post-injury care, Dr. Mandelbaum wants to understand what caused the initial wound.
He has us actually stand up and reenact exactly how she was standing on the board, what way she fell off into the water. I kind of seconded the story of where I saw the board go, that it didn't cross over her, it stayed on the left side because her feet pushed it off.
She couldn't tell me the surfboard was near her when she was injured. She couldn't tell me that she fell onto a rock. And when I saw the shape of the wound, I began to think that this may be caused by a small shark. Here off the coast, we have lots of small sharks. We have mako sharks, juvenile white sharks, could be even some blue sharks. I've seen all of those swim right around the tidal zone, right around the waves.
He automatically, without much question or mystery, seems to think that this was a shark bite. And this is the first time that Sophia and I are hearing this information.
And my sense was, from probing and asking Sophia about this, she was probably hit by accident by one of the small sharks who were basically hunt right in that tidal zone.
He assumes that either I fell off the wave and then startled the shark, or I kind of surfed like into it and then fell off my board, and then in that moment it could have come in and bit me.
Video evidence shows sharks close enough for human contact, but what exactly happened to Sophia is unclear.
We were trying to figure out how my board could have been like shaped like against me for it to hit and bite the fin as well as my leg. And there's this one part that's about the size of the part of the fin that had been snapped off. And so it is likely that that part of the fin was kind of protecting this part of my my leg.
The shark's teeth are extremely sharp. Just the contact of the upper jaw in that area could create the wound like that. And for me, I've reviewed a lot of shark wounds. I've seen a few in my career. And when you look at the atlas of shark wounds, and there are many of these, this for me looks like a juvenile shark bite.
It's one of those things, it's like you have more of a chance of getting struck by lightning.
It is very likely that there were sharks in the area around that time.
We're just thinking like, this is insane. Like, what are the chances of this?
Sophia Robb was surfing in shark-infested Southern California waters. She suffered a mysterious wound. Does it necessarily follow that she was attacked by a great white?
I would say very unlikely. A surfer on a surfboard, that outline in the surface can look like a seal or a sea lion, but those are items that the sharks eat as adults, not as juveniles. There is the theory that maybe the shark kind of nicked her in the knee and also nicked the surfboard, but in order for a shark to be able to do both, they have to be a very large, powerful shark, and it's very unlikely that they would have been able to do that as a juvenile.
Dr. Caceres has her own theory of the culprit, which is no more comforting.
If I had to choose a fish or an animal that I think might have caused this, I would have to say barracuda. Barracuda can be quite tenacious, they can swim very fast, and it's very hard to spot them from the beach or from the surfboard. If you see a shark, you know it's coming at you, but barracudas can swim so fast, short distances, that it might be 20 feet away from you and next second they're in your face. I would see a barracuda and be much more scared than a shark. Barracudas are definitely aggressive. They are not as large as sharks, but they're definitely predators, and they definitely have some teeth that can cause some damage.
For Sophia Robb, it's very likely she'll never know what tore open her leg in the surf that day.
Yeah, it does remain a mystery, but what doesn't remain a mystery is the experience that taught me that I'm not invincible, but there was never a question that I would get back in the water. It was going to happen. It was just a matter of when. The stitches I had in for 12 weeks, and I just remember the moment that I decided, like, screw it, there's a few more weeks left that I have to wait, but I'm just gonna like jump in the water really quick. And it was really beautiful, and it made me realize that I don't have anything to fear in the water. It's not that there's all these menacing creatures out there. They're all just, you know, coexisting and living like really beautiful, colorful lives, and I'm just here visiting and getting to be a part of it. In that moment, it just completely solidified my love for the ocean and my appreciation of it.
After multiple surgeries to repair his forearms, back, shoulder, and scalp, Todd spends 6 weeks in a brace and another 3 months in physical therapy, but eventually fully recovers.
As soon as I got the brace off, I was ready to go back in the woods. I had 4 days left of hunting season, and I just wanted to get back out there, and I knew that I had to go back to the spot where I was attacked. I knew that would help get me through it. So I had a friend of mine go with me, and we hiked back in right to where I had the attack, and I stood there and told him the story, and we kind of looked around and said, this is where the bear was, and that was my first day back in the woods after my attack. And I just knew that my life is in the woods, and I'd have to go back for recreating and for work. And so I knew that just attacking it straight on was the best way to go to get through that. And I think every day after that, it got a little bit easier. Every day that I didn't get attacked, it felt a little bit better. And 4 years now, 5 years, I'm still anxious. It's different than it used to be. I don't like hiking in the dark anymore. I'd rather wait till I can see something coming at daylight. But I'm still out in that situation in bear country, and I'm just prepared. I've got my bear spray, I've got a pistol, my head is on a swivel. I'm paying attention to the terrain around me and making sure I don't get caught in that situation again.
I imagine Todd would agree that the most important lesson here is to really trust your gut from the beginning. Just because a situation is familiar, such as entering this landscape right at dawn, doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing to do. When you're walking into bear territory, especially where there could be mother bears, make sure that you're not alone.
To be and have an encounter with a grizzly bear and to survive it, I think, is just so lucky, because things could have gone so wrong. It's just one claw in the wrong spot or one bite in the back of my neck could have killed me or paralyzed me. I think that day was kind of an eye-opener. The odds are I won't get attacked again, but anytime you're in the woods and there's wildlife and there's predators out there, something can happen. And I knew that that was a possibility. That's part of life. And I never felt like I'm never gonna go back into the woods. I want to enjoy that outdoor exercise experience. I want to see the wildlife, get the photos, and be part of that and smell that fresh air. I'm never gonna give that up, and I'm always happy to be back out and enjoy nature and the outdoors.
It was my very first time in the Grand Canyon. True backpacking, backcountry backpacking in the Grand Canyon. Just thinking, where am I? What did I get myself into?
Grand Canyon National Park, one of the most awe-inspiring wonders of the natural world. 29-year-old Allison Redmond and her father Dennis are here to embark on an intense 5-day father-daughter hike to the bottom of the Big Hole.
My name is Allison Redmond, and I'm from Reno, Nevada. I love to practice yoga, and I love to rock climb. A friend just took me randomly one day saying that I was athletic and I thought I'd enjoy it, and I just kept going to the gym. My dad is super athletic. He'll just wake up at the crack of dawn to go hiking. He doesn't stop. The last time I tried racing him, I broke my arm.
Well, my name is Dennis Redmond, and I'm retired now. I live in Scottsdale, Arizona. We have 5 children. Allison is number 4 in line. She's just very active, very outgoing, and always up for an adventure. So this was going to be, kind of a father-daughter adventure.
They start their descent from Monument Point on the North Rim. Having done this hike many times before, Dennis leads the group.
Go, kids.
Behind, his daughter Allison, their friend Scott, his daughter Samantha, and her boyfriend Nick.
The way we planned our hike was day 1, park at the trailhead, hike down about 5 miles to our first campsite.
Although an experienced hiker, Allison has trained hard for this, her first descent into the Grand Canyon.
As I was hiking, I was just amazed, just looking down at the canyon. It was just awe-inspiring. You have all these different shades of reds and hues of greens, and I was thinking to myself, like, girl, you fall. It's not only gonna hurt, but this is super precarious.
The Grand Canyon is anything but easy. It is a rugged place to hike. Rocks and ledges and whatnot. You never know what you're gonna step into.
After their descent, the group begins a demanding hike along the Red Wall, a trail that leads across the canyon to an oasis called Thunder River.
The Red Wall is a couple of miles, just treacherous, rocky. There were some little critters, some lizards. We saw some condors, and it was getting really, really, really hot. Easily 90 degrees plus, really relying on my poles.
I prefer to use walking sticks. It's nice for support. And if you ever decide to sit down, I always use my hiking pole to just kind of tap around the rocks. Scorpions, any other venomous type creatures could be crawling around. Thinking of things that may bite you is absolutely part of your plan.
I'm Dr. Emily Taylor. I'm a professor of biological sciences at Cal Poly. The Grand Canyon area in general is a biodiversity hotspot. This is a very, very, very harsh, hot desert. So you do tend to have a number of highly adapted species, including venomous species. There are centipedes down there, rattlesnakes, scorpions. There are these water bugs that inflict a painful bite. There are indeed a number of different things that are potentially lethally dangerous to a person if they bite them.
Then we start making our way towards Thunder River, is called.
It's incredible because you have this huge canyon wall and this little tiny hole where just water is gushing out of it.
You did it.
Taking off the pack, being underneath the shade, it felt amazing. Just a true oasis. That was my favorite place in the world at the time.
We're having lunch, we're making smoothies. It's just really enjoyable.
At this point, everyone had changed out of their hiking shoes and had put their water shoes on. We start looking at the waterfall, taking pictures of the waterfall. I see Sam and Nick is taking a ton of pictures.
All right, Nick, it's your turn.
I grab the phone and I'm next to this bush. It's thorny and super, super green. And the whole time I'm taking pictures, picture after picture after picture after picture.
Okay, let me get a different angle, hold on.
And then that's when I took a couple steps and I feel just this searing pain. A thorn like go in and come out, and I'm just stumbling forward and just like, what was this? It's like when you get alcohol in a paper cut. It's just that kind of sharp, all of a sudden, just bam, pain. Of course, I'm gonna stub my freaking toe in the middle of the Grand Canyon.
You okay? Everybody's coming together to see what's going on.
Told them, like, I'm in a lot of pain. And then I took my shoe off and I looked down at my toe and the blood looked watered down. Definitely thought to myself, this looks weird.
Frankly, we didn't know what we were onto because there was just a single little puncture. Did she get poked by a stick, or did she get poked by some other insect?
I had no idea what had injured me. No sights, no sounds, just the instant searing sensation. It was just a huge mystery.
Spearfishing, for me, it's the coolest sport in the world. You're in the water, you're holding your breath, trying to make as little disturbance as possible. Surrounded by all the life and just seeing all the beauty nature has. But if you want to catch fish, well, there's risks you're willing to take. I've been doing it my whole life. I guess what's bound to happen.
Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, famous for warm waters and sun-drenched resorts. A popular destination for fishermen from all over the world, like Houston native Jonathan Schoeneman, who has been fishing here since he was a kid.
My name is Jonathan Schoeneman. I'm originally from Houston, Texas, and my mother is originally from Mexico City, so it was cool because I grew up in between Mexico and Houston. I grew up in the country, so my whole life was hunting and fishing and catching armadillos, anything I could catch with my hands. It was amazing being able to fish as a child and loading the boat with big Dorado, big white marlin, and catching not one, but a lot.
Travis Simmons is Jonathan's childhood friend and longtime fishing buddy.
He's always been like an older brother to me. We were always fishing and causing a little trouble, making a little ruckus in the neighborhood. Jonathan has always been like just a free spirit. He thrives for fishing and for adventure. And all he really cared about was like the next fish he was gonna catch.
It's 2016. Jonathan turns his lifelong love for fishing into a business selling his catch to local restaurants around Cancun. He convinces Travis to join him.
So I decided to move down to Cancun, and we had been fishing every day.
Weather was great for a few weeks, and then all of a sudden we had terrible weather for like a week and a half. So I was like, Travis, let's go to the lagoon. Let's go snook fishing.
On a breezy September afternoon, Jonathan and Travis head out to Nichupte Lagoon, an area home to many coveted species of fish, like snook, tarpon, and bonefish. But such bounty also attracts a host of predators. Jaguars, ocelots, and crocodiles frequent the region.
We fished for a couple hours and no luck, nothing. And I had that feeling that the fish were going to be stacked up in this little kind of cove where it goes into a freshwater spring. So it's a perfect area for all life to be there.
We anchored off about maybe 30 yards from the tree line where the roots and the mangroves were. He's already changing, getting geared up, putting his weight belt on, snorkel, mask, getting his gun ready.
So I was like, well, let's get in the water. And I was like, oh, I don't know.
He's like, oh, no, I've done this before. It's okay. You know, it's no problem. I mean, I've heard him say that before, and we find ourselves in situations.
When I told Travis,
if you want to catch the fish, you got to become the fish.
There's warning signs everywhere. I mean, I love Jonathan like a brother, but sometimes he doesn't have the best ideas. But I didn't want him to have all the fun. So I decided to go ahead and make the plunge.
I didn't pay attention to Travis. You know, he stayed on the outside, and I was going deep in the mangroves. It was one of those days I'll never forget how much fish were actually there. You go in and be like schools of 40, 50 of them just swimming right by you. It was easy. Just pull your gun back and aim and pick one out and shoot. Snook. You sell directly to a restaurant, you can get 180 to 200 pesos. I just couldn't stop. I kept on going, going, going. Obviously, when that's happening, I'm not paying attention to anything. I don't care what's next to me. Guessing I had 10, 12 fish. My stringer was pretty much full. I was going back to unload it. And my last dive, I didn't see anything, so I'm swimming out, coming out of the mangroves with the gun to my side, ready to take that first inhale of air. And right as I came up, inches from my face, the croc was staring at me. All I could see was the beak in the front of its mouth. And then, bam, got me face first. So, face first looking croc's mouth, like completely fake. I couldn't see anything, just a little bit to the left and right, out of the corners of my eyes. And I just felt like getting hit over the head, then putting in a vise, just crunching down harder and harder and harder. I'm guessing the crocodile was probably 12 to 13 foot long, 400 to 500 pounds. It was just a solid beast of a dinosaur, just massive.
The crocodile. 200 million years of evolution has turned this animal into one of Earth's most lethal hunters. This amazing creature can grow to over 15 feet long, swim 20 miles per hour, and hold its breath underwater for up to 60 minutes. Dr. Marissa Tellez is a biologist and director of the Crocodile Research Coalition.
When you are in crocodile habitat, the last thing you want to do is attract the crocodiles. For example, tying the fish on a line where it's wiggling and it's dying prey and it's going to attract the crocodile through these ISOs, the integumentary sensory organs. These are nerve endings that are around the crocodile's head as well as along the body. So likely the ISOs of the croc are just firing off and he's just going closer towards the dying fish. And Jonathan's coming towards him. And so as Jonathan's coming up, the crocodile kind of feels something closer. For all he knows, it's just a big fish, and he clamps down on Jonathan.
I'm face on the croc, like completely looking down the barrel. Nose and everything perfectly centered inside his mouth. I remember the smell. If it just smelled of that dirty, rotten water, it really smelled of death. And just hearing the hissing noise and seeing the row of teeth and just the freckles in the throat. And then the crunching of my bones.
When the crocodile chomped on Jonathan's head, that was anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 pounds per square inch. And as Jonathan is struggling, that crocodile is actually gripping even more.
And then it rolled me. I was like, oh, crap. I let go of my spear gun, and I took my weight belt off, and I started bracing myself in the mud. As it was trying to, like, it rolled me, and it kept on trying to pull me under.
For an alligator or a crocodile, the death roll, it serves two purposes. It can either help take chunks of a large prey, or it could also be used to injure and impale it.
So it's crunching down on me. So we think, okay, I'm gonna go for its eyes. So I'm putting both hands up there. I was like realizing the size of its head, how big it was. Like I couldn't touch. So I'm feeling the eyes, and with both of my thumbs, I'm just gouging them in its eyes, and nothing was happening.
The eyes are a vulnerable spot on a crocodile that in some previous attacks, people actually punching the eyes of a crocodile or an alligator, the alligator or the crocodile will release. Unfortunately, in this particular scenario, the croc did not loosen its grip.
He's just biting down, and I can just hear the crunching, my teeth breaking. At the time, I thought it was the croc's teeth breaking. And he's just clamping down harder and harder and harder. And I'm seeing the water's normally this kind of dark tea color. And then I'm bleeding so much that it managed to actually turn red.
At an oasis deep in the canyon, Allison Redmond suffers a small needle-like wound in her foot, unsure how she got it.
Looking around, I was thinking it was a thorn from the bushes that were next to the creek.
There's a number of different things it could have been. It could have been a thorn in the plants. However, the Grand Canyon is in the middle of a desert. And so just like people who visit the Grand Canyon are going to be attracted to the river as a place where they can fill up their water bottles and cool off, so are the animals. The water in the Colorado River attracts tons of wildlife, including a number of different things that are potentially dangerous. But certainly, if I was Allison, I would want to be thinking in my brain, that's probably a plant, because otherwise the actual implications would mean that I'm days from help and I've just been bitten by something that could kill me.
At that point, there was a lot of pain in my foot and my toe, and it looked a little swollen. Other people at the waterfall mentioned that they had seen something called a water beetle. And I guess these water beetles have a pretty nasty sting.
I think that the reason that the group thought it could be a water beetle is because there was a single puncture wound which water beetles can do. There's a lot of lore about water beetles, that they're these crazy predatory beetles that walk around stabbing people. That's not necessarily true, but you know, it could have potentially stabbed her and gotten that sort of pain reaction, but it wouldn't have been that painful. They would never induce the amount of pain that she was in.
My foot is throbbing. It hurts so bad.
How does it feel?
I can do this. I think I'm gonna be okay.
But I didn't want to be a burden on the rest of the group.
This is where, when you're the father, ultimately whatever happens here, I'm going to feel responsible. So I got to start thinking, are we doing the right evaluation?
They give Allison basic first aid treatment, but with the day running out, it's vital that they get to their campsite, a strenuous quarter-mile hike away.
So we decided we're going to continue our hike, because where we were at, definitely there was no way anyone's going to get us out of there.
I knew that there's no way that anybody could carry me because of the kind of treacherous terrain. I was able at this point to still be able to put my hiking boot on.
Of course, I mean, for lack of a better term, interrogating her. What's going on? How you feeling? Oh, I can do this. I think I'll be okay. And she gets up on her hiking poles and she just kind of hobbled down, and she's not complaining per se at all. So that's sort of some of those indicators. Think, well, maybe she's hopefully going to be okay.
I can feel it swelling. I can feel it getting bigger. Every step I took not only was painful to put weight on, but also extremely heavy every time I picked it up.
Just never complaining, not as if, oh, excruciating pain that I can't do this, and no, I can go. I'll go down to the next campground, and it's just tougher nails, this kid.
Allison keeps on hiking, so sounds like she was a really tough woman and wanted to just walk it off, which if it was a wasp or a water beetle or something, she indeed would have been able to. But as time progresses and the pain becomes really unbearable, this is the first signal that it probably was something more serious. And then as she continues to hike on it, even with the severe pain of her body that is trying to tell her, don't put weight on this foot, see to this injury, take care of this injury. That's the purpose of pain in our bodies. By ignoring that, we're ignoring the signal from our body that something is seriously wrong.
Despite the escalating pain in her foot, Allison reaches the campsite. The group sets up tents for the night, still hoping this mysterious wound is nothing and she'll be better come morning.
My dad set up the tent. We had figured because of the irritation, just stay off your feet and fall asleep with your foot elevated. I hadn't clued anybody in that I was worried quite yet. I figured that if I'd let my dad know I was worried, he would go into full panic mode.
Well, I think that what she was doing was just putting up the tough girl front. I got this. She's getting concerned, you could tell, but she was not breaking down.
I'll be fine.
At this point, I thought that I was gonna wake up the next morning and hike the rest of the canyon. That night was restless. My leg was swelling. I was in a lot of pain. That's when kind of fear might have started to creep in just a little bit.
I'm sleeping next to her, but all night I'm awake listening for every move. Obviously, she wasn't sleeping very well. So now doubt's coming on. Am I making the right decision? Should I allow this to go on any further?
I wake up and I get out of my tent. At this point now, I cannot walk. The swelling had gone all the way up to my knee, just excruciating pain. It was definitely not a water beetle.
When Allison wakes up in the morning and sees that her foot is severely swollen 12 hours after the bite, the conclusion can only be drawn that this was a rattlesnake bite. Nothing else would cause those sorts of symptoms. And there is only one type of rattlesnake that occurs in this area, the Grand Canyon rattlesnake, Crotalus abyssus, so named after the abyss of the Grand Canyon that it lives in.
The Grand Canyon rattlesnake, a highly venomous pit viper found nowhere else in the world. It can grow up to 4 feet long. The perfectly camouflaged coloration and calm demeanor often allows it to escape detection. And unfortunately for Allison, Thunder River is the ideal hangout for such a highly evolved creature.
So within the Grand Canyon, Thunder River is an example of an oasis. It's a place that attracts people who are hikers in the area. It also attracts wildlife. Rattlesnakes are going to be feeding upon the rodents that thrive in areas where there's water, and indeed also just drinking from the water. And finally, sitting down next to the water, they're going to find a much cooler microhabitat than they might way up in the hot rocks in the desert. But Allison, not knowing that she had been envenomated by a rattlesnake, I think this really speaks to that she didn't see the snake. And clearly she wouldn't have thought it was a rattlesnake bite because most people think that if it's a rattlesnake bite, there's going to be 2 fang marks. And indeed, there usually are. But sometimes only 1 fang can actually penetrate the flesh. This can happen for a number of reasons. The angle of the snake's bite, the size of the snake, and especially the fact that the fangs had to go through these water shoes. And even if it was in the back of her mind that it could be a rattlesnake, there's probably this strong denial by her subconscious that it could be, because a rattlesnake bite means your trip is over and let's hope for the best for your medical care and even your survival.
At this point, Allison and her father are still unaware of what bit her. They just know her injury is getting worse by the hour.
And I looked at it and I said, no, we're not waiting any longer. Call the militia, is the words I used, because that means we need help. And they go, well, you know, maybe we ought to wait and see if the swelling goes down. No, we are not waiting any longer. This is it. Call in the help.
I'm just like, yep, I'm going. I gotta go. Let's make the phone call.
Within the mangroves of Cancun's Nichupte Lagoon, a crocodile crushes Jonathan Schoeneman's head in its jaws. His friend Travis is spearfishing hundreds of yards away, oblivious to the life and death struggle.
I'm fighting. I'm starting to get physically exhausted, and then I remember crocs that have a flap in their mouth, so they always close that flap when they eat. You know, if you push it down, there's a ball of water and a gag and let you go. I reached in between my face and the mouth, slide it in there and punching it. I remember hitting as hard as I possibly could. Actually, my hands was completely bruised from sticking inside his mouth.
He starts punching at the palatal valve. And the palatal valve is similar in a sense to the lips of a human. It prevents water from going in, and it's another sensitive area. Many times the crocodilian, the alligator or the crocodile, will let go. If you pulled down the palatal valve, water would rush in and the alligator would let go.
As I'm reaching down his throat, punching it, and that vice is getting tighter around my jaw and trying to push the flap down, and that didn't work. This whole time, he's kind of pushing me back to the mangroves, and a second later, like corner of my eye, I noticed a branch from the mangrove. I managed to break the branch, started hitting the croc on the head. I was completely on adrenaline. I had the biggest adrenaline high ever. I mean, to snap that branch, and it was a big branch. And my head, think about it, I'm in a vice. I'm just hitting myself like as hard as I could, just over and over and over. And finally let me go.
So when Jonathan had the branch and started knocking at the crocodile might have finally just gave up, just simply because it might not have had the greatest grip on Jonathan, given that Jonathan's head was in the front part of the snout.
And that relief. And then I just looked down, I could see all the blood, everything, my teeth dangling, everything is mangled. And then he went back into where it came from. I went the other way, and I was swimming back. I went back yelling, making gargling noises because my jaw was completely split in half and dangling. So I'm just making this weird noise.
My head is partially submerged. My ears are below the water level. But I started to hear this like kind of muffled scream. Just over and over again screaming. And I see him coming out of the mangroves, just covered in blood, and his jaw hanging down to his chest. And it looked as if Wolverine had just went like that to his skull.
You know, I could see his face, like that shock, like what the hell is happening? You know, he just charged right to me to come get me. No hesitation.
I turn him around to his back, put him on my chest, and like start kicking back to the boat as hard and fast as possible, because I didn't know if that croc was coming for us to finish the job.
Travis pulls his friend Jonathan into their boat. The damage from the crocodile attack is extensive.
I start checking him, making sure that his main carotid artery had not been severed. And I know I have to stop the bleeding. I know we got to get out of here, and I know that I have to find help.
Took his shirt off and wrapped it around my face, pulled the anchor. And I was like, his is literally his first time in the lagoon. So I was guiding, hey, just go here, like showing him where the marina to go. And I'm holding my face, and the shirt just dripping blood everywhere.
The boat's just a mess, and it just looked like a murder scene. And I kind of land the boat right into the dock. I just started yelling, like, "Ayúdame, ayúdame, help me, like, help, help." And I'm telling the people, ambulancia, call an ambulance. And he's, at this point, like, he just looks like he's fading in and out of consciousness a little bit. I was just sitting there, basically cradling him, holding him, not knowing if, like, he's breathing his last breath because of the amount of blood loss.
After nearly an hour, the ambulance team arrives to help Jonathan.
When the paramedics got there, they pulled me up to try to lay me onto the bed. And I'm like, I'm suffocating because I couldn't breathe. My tongue and everything was hanging. My airway's completely blocked off.
The communication barrier was definitely a problem.
And Travis, at the time, he didn't speak Spanish, and I had my jaw ripped off. I'm mumbling.
It's rush hour traffic, the middle of hotel zone. Everybody's getting off of work, and it's just bumper to bumper. The ambulance, it was crazy. He's rolling up onto the curb, going around traffic, the sirens blaring. I highly doubt this EMT had ever seen a case this severe with somebody having their face basically ripped off by a crocodile.
I saw my face completely destroyed in the mirrors of the ambulance. That's when I panicked. I started losing consciousness at that moment.
At their campsite in the Grand Canyon, Dennis Redmond makes the call. Though he doesn't realize his daughter was bit by a rattlesnake, he knows Allison needs immediate evacuation. Using a satellite beacon, they contact the canyon's Emergency Response Center, which dispatches paramedics to the site.
So my dad was making sure that he could feel a pulse in my foot. And he had to dig his finger into my foot in order to find it. That's when I saw concern in his face, because he was like, well, it's there, but it's faint.
There's absolutely no question that a person has been envenomated once we see severe swelling and pain. Grand Canyon rattlesnakes have a really strong venom. It's full of different proteins that are going to be disrupting the blood clotting cascade that's going on in her foot, potentially disrupting blood flow to important tissues like ligaments and tendons. Meanwhile, there's also neurotoxins that are known to be present. There could be serious risks of her losing her ability to be able to breathe properly. When you're so far away from help and from anti-venom treatment, which is the only way to treat a snake bite, this could be a serious, serious problem, both for her actual foot and also potentially for her life because of the neurotoxins.
It's been almost 24 hours since Allison's bite. The paramedic team arrives, but their helicopter can't land this deep in the canyon.
So they turn around and go back a couple miles to drop off the team. The team then has to do multiple crossings in the river in order to get to us. So once the paramedics got there, Megan, the paramedic, had informed me that she believed it was a rattlesnake bite. This is when the first moment of actual fear and panic actually set in. Just complete meltdown.
Finally, Allison realizes this is probably a rattlesnake. Snakebite specialists are going to tell you that the most important thing to do in the event of a rattlesnake envenomation is to seek medical treatment as quickly as possible. So the faster you get to the doctor to get the anti-venom treatment, the better. All this time goes by with Allison, she's increasing the chances that there could be this long-term damage.
So the paramedics gave me an IV, and they start prepping to fully extract me from the canyon.
I'm trying to be calm, right? I'm trying to process all of this. But when your child is down, you have to have your facilities. I can feel it coming back. I mean, but you can't show it.
He's terrified, and it's all in his face. I didn't want to freak out. If I was freaking out, he would just wouldn't be able to handle it.
A few hours after a crocodile attack, Jonathan and Travis make it through rush hour traffic to the hospital.
They didn't know if I was going to make it because of all the trauma I had to my head, all the blood loss I have. My jaw was split in half. It comes from here all the way over here. This is where it's completely ripped off. And plus the bacteria from the crocodile, my brain was just swelling tremendously. When I woke up, I didn't know if I was going to be able to speak or anything, or if I was going to have brain damage. I had no idea. 17 days later, I woke up. They did such a fabulous job putting me together. My jaw wasn't wired shut.
I couldn't believe he looked as good as he did in that moment. So I was in shock seeing him. I thought he was going to be deformed for the rest of his life, like severely deformed. And so I was very surprised. They put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
Back in the Grand Canyon, the clock is ticking. And with no place for the helicopter to land, they put Allison in a screamer suit in order to airlift her out of the canyon to higher ground.
So the helicopter came over. I was hooked in. Adam was hooked in. We get lifted off, and they have us dangling 150, 200 feet off the ground of the Grand Canyon.
Next time I saw her, she was flying stringing 150-foot rope or so down the Grand Canyon. I'm thinking, oh, jeez, what's happening here? And I'm looking up, and she's just slowly coming down the canyon.
In that moment, I was thinking to myself, this is a very bad situation, but this is pretty freaking cool. It's called a screamer suit because most people are very frightened by heights and will scream in it. And the whole time I was like, whee!
With Allison on her way to the hospital, the rest of the group hikes on to their next campsite. Dennis stays behind. He will hike out of the canyon and back to his daughter at sunrise.
There I am, 5 o'clock or so in the afternoon, 3/4 the way down the Grand Canyon. My 30-year-old daughter, she's just been bitten by a rattlesnake. And when they're gone, it was just me, because everybody left. But that's when I broke down. I couldn't handle it. And then this is when I just said, okay, I gotta let this go. That's where it all comes together. Everything comes together. And thinking, oh my gosh, every minute counts now, and it's been 24 hours. What in the world decision was I making at this time? Why didn't I do this sooner? This could have detrimental effects.
When I was in the helicopter, the pain it's like whenever your foot falls asleep, but instead of the pins and needles, it's more like chopsticks and acid, just searing, just like coming in from all sides.
20 hours in, the venom has probably caused some severe damage within her foot, depending on how much was initially injected. The swelling is also potentially leading to compartment syndrome. Compartment syndrome is a situation in which the swelling in certain parts of the foot or the affected limb can compress blood vessels and nerves in other parts of the foot, thereby leading to tissue death. And furthermore, the venom has probably moved through her lymphatic system throughout the rest of her body, where neurotoxins, if present, could be impacting her ability to breathe and other factors.
I arrive in Flagstaff. I get checked into ICU. There are people everywhere, people drawing all over me, poking me, prodding me, and I'm feeling safe. They're going to give me this anti-venom. I'm gonna get better. So they administer it first with a microdrip. So gradually over the next 10 minutes, I'm feeling weird. kind of fuzzy and kind of heavy. I was just thinking that, oh, this is what antivenom feels like. It'll be fine. After the 10 minutes, they crank it up because they feel confident that I was safe. And within seconds, I start to go into an anaphylactic shock. My throat is starting to close up. My eyes, I can feel them heavy and swelling. I can start to see the skin around my eyes just swelling shut. And at that point, I was like, okay, that's it.
Poor Allison, the very thing that is designed to save her causes an allergic reaction within her body, which is relatively uncommon. It happens in maybe up to 3% maximum of patients, and she goes into anaphylactic shock. Anaphylactic shock is when the body responds with an overreactive immune system to an allergen, in this case, some of the snake venom proteins, and goes into shock, meaning that the blood vessels dilate, her blood pressure drops, her throat swells up, and she has serious trouble breathing. So in fact, in her case, a lot of the things that in some people are caused by the venom were caused by the antivenom. And this may have been because she was allergic to some of the proteins that are in the antivenom.
Antivenom is made by injecting small amounts of venom into domestic animals like horses or sheep. The resulting antibodies are then collected and purified. Allison is allergic to horses, so it's possible that trace horse proteins in the antivenom caused her reaction. Back in the canyon, Dennis is getting updates from his wife.
When I got the word that she had, quote, an allergic reaction, I'm thinking, oh my gosh. You know, that is one of those moments, again, where you don't realize how much you love your children until you think they're in a position that they're not going to make it out alive. And it's one of those things that it's just, you think, how could it be any worse?
Doctors are able to stop the anaphylaxis, but without an effective treatment, the venom continues to spread throughout Allison's body.
They immediately call Phoenix Banner Hospital to see if they had the other brand of antivenom. Luckily, they do, and back on another helicopter to Phoenix, and they started all over again.
The next morning at first light, Dennis begins a solo trek out of the canyon. He never hiked so fast in his life.
When I left at 5:30 that morning, my intent was to get to the hospital. That was where I was going, and I wasn't stopping. And the whole time I'm getting some of these texts and things about what's going on. You know, they got her settled down, they got her shipped to Phoenix by helicopter, so I'm getting the updates.
This time, doctors in Phoenix administer Allison another antivenom.
They are made differently, different extractions, different antibodies. And one of them is made with horse antibodies, and one of them is made out of sheep or goat antibodies,
which she has no negative reaction to. Allison, her mother, and the medical staff breathe a huge sigh of relief.
I just shoot up the mountain, and I'm up at the top by noon the next day. By then, Allison's getting out of the hospital.
Thankfully, the second round of antivenom treatment is so successful, Allison is released from the hospital that afternoon.
So I jumped in my truck, threw everything in there, and then I just headed home. By the time I got there, she's there at home, sitting on the couch with her foot up. Oh, hi, Dad. Hi, Dad. Is that what you got to say? It was quite the journey.
Back in Houston, Jonathan Shoneman's recovery is nothing short of astounding.
When it was ripped apart, all my bones were together. That's why they were able to piece me back basically perfectly. And this is next to the carotid artery. The doctors were just amazed that they could see it. If it would have been a millimeter over, it would have cut the vein. I would have died out like that.
Yes, Jonathan was in crocodile habitat. But something else we have to consider is in these very touristy areas, such as Cancun, there has been an increase of negative interactions between humans and crocodiles. And some of those negative interactions, it's because people are feeding crocodiles. these animals become habituated and they lose their fear of humans. With that loss of fear, they're more likely to be bold and aggressive, and that's when an attack can happen. A general rule, no matter where you go in the world, do not feed the wildlife, because you might enjoy having a nice selfie that you can put on social media, not realizing you get to leave and go back to your nice, safe home, and you have increased the danger of a particular community.
I need water in my life. Doesn't matter where it's at, I just want to be close to it. I have people talk to me, oh, I can't believe the crocodile, how could you be in the water? Well, really, it's just made me stronger. My family, I promised them I'll never go spearfishing in the lagoon, and I kept that promise. I've been in there, swimming, but not spearfishing. So I've kept it pretty good.
After the rattlesnake bite, Allison faced months of physical rehabilitation just to walk again. But one question still remains. How did a group of such experienced hikers misdiagnose Allison's rattlesnake bite?
People are very reluctant to think that they could have been bitten by a rattlesnake unless they saw the snake. In reality, it can actually be really different. She's walking through brush, it's loud, raging river, she doesn't hear even the snake moving, she doesn't hear anything. And it happens so rapidly that it makes sense that Allison would never have even seen it. She would just say, hey, what was that? And then 10 steps later, that hurts a little bit. And then by the time she's really thinking, oh shoot, that could have been a rattlesnake, that snake is miles behind her.
According to Dr. Taylor, Allison likely wasn't the only one surprised by this encounter.
So imagine that you're a rattlesnake hanging out under the brush. You can't really see very well because you're covered in this brush. You have no ears. What you do have is a strong sense of smell and taste, and then you have this sense of vibration. I think it's definitely possible that because of this raging water, that the snake didn't have the opportunity to sense Allison's footsteps as she approached. The rattlesnake is sitting there quietly. Allison comes up, neither of them sensed the other one, and when she stepped on or near it, it bit to defend itself.
6 months later, Allison is nearly fully recovered with no intentions of letting this incident slow her down.
I'm back climbing, back practicing yoga, and I will be going back into the Grand Canyon in 2 weeks from this being filmed. I'm just psyched to give the canyon another go.
Less than a year after the bite, Allison returns to the Grand Canyon, completing one of its most difficult hikes, the Nankoweap Trail, with Dad by her side. But she will never forget how fortunate she is to be alive.
Just my luck, right? Me being allergic to antivenom and me getting bit by a rattlesnake in the Grand Canyon, both, I would have had better chances of winning the lottery.
It was supposed to be the father-daughter adventure, you know, with friends, but sometimes life makes a little twist. So we have a whole new adventure to talk about and to share with people, say, learn something from this, if you will.
I think this entire experience has definitely strengthened the bond between my father and I. He checks in more. He usually is a super fast hiker. He's usually leading the pack, like first one up at the summit. And now like he hangs back a little bit when we're hiking together a little bit more than he used to. I like that.
It's not really about the hunting. It's just being out in the woods and seeing the different species of animals. Just being out there alone, the serenity. Just discovering new things and looking at just how nature acts.
Palm Beach County, Florida, home to the J.W. Corbett Wildlife Management Area. Nestled between West Palm Beach and Lake Okeechobee lies over 60,000 acres of protected forests and wetlands. Known as the Old Florida Tangle, this reserve hosts a diverse array of wildlife, from deer and bobcats to waterfowl and reptiles. A rich bounty that attracts the most passionate outdoor enthusiasts, people like James and Teresa Boyce, who've been hunting here for over 15 years.
I've been hunting since I was 5 years old. I started out when I was a young fella in Maine. My father took me in the woods and with my brothers learned how to hunt. And from there on, I moved to Florida and I carried on hunting to this day.
The first time I actually went officially hunting, James took me and, we walked through the woods together and I got to see like a deer in the wild. Flash forward 16 years later, and we're still doing the same thing. I'm still following him around the woods. I've learned so much about the animals and what they can provide and the different nutritional values. So it's been the field to table process.
We have never ate anything from the store in 10 years for meat. We only eat off the land.
It's the beginning of the season, and James and Teresa are hoping to get their first deer.
That morning, November 9th, 2019, it was like any other morning. It's first day of hunting, and it was just supposed to be a normal, regular hunting day.
So we arrive at our location, and then we lock the truck up, grab our gear. So it's cloudy, it's kind of gross looking, and a little drizzle.
So we went by Trail 3. Trail 3 goes all the way from the top of Corbett down to the backside and around. The first day of hunting is when everybody gets in the woods to hunt. And there's so many people and swamp buggies and shooting. And so we knew the buggies hunt from the main road to Trail 3. So what do? They scare all the deer that way.
James and Teresa continue down Trail 3, hoping to intercept the deer being scared off by other hunters in the area.
By that time, it's probably around 8:30, 8:45. We get about 3 miles.
We're navigating through the water, and the rain is starting to rain a little harder. My feet are getting soaked, I'm getting soaked, and at this point, it was chilly, and I'm miserable. I'm done. I'm like, let's just go back.
And I said, you're right, it is starting to rain a little harder, let's go.
So now we're headed back to the car mode. So you're not really paying as much attention, and I was just trying to keep up with him.
She was trailing behind 10 to 15 feet, and I remember her saying what she wanted to eat for breakfast. And I was like, yeah, that sounds good. I step around a palmetto bush, and all of a sudden it felt like I stepped right into an electrical outlet, like a jolt. And all of a sudden my legs numb. And I'm like, how did electrical get out here 3 miles in the woods?
And then I heard him scream. I'm thinking he got bit by a snake. That was my first thought. Oh my gosh, it's a snake.
And I looked down and I got a gator with my whole leg in his mouth.
The American alligator evolved over 150 million years, around since the time of the dinosaurs. Found in freshwater rivers, swamps, and marshes across the southeastern United States, this large semi-aquatic reptile can grow up to 15 feet long and weigh over 1,800 pounds, making them one of the fiercest predators in the region. Dr. Marisa Tellez, Executive Director of the Crocodile Research Coalition, has been studying these animals for years, and she knows exactly what James is up against.
The American alligator have evolved a bite force to clamp down and to hold on. A 10-foot alligator, you're looking at a bite force of about 1,800 pounds per square inch. That would be like a semi-truck falling on your big toe.
All I remember saying, you gotta be kidding me. And of course, now he's crunching down, and I'm telling you, the pain, if you go 1 to 10, it'd have to be a 15. Enough to make your eyes roll back in your head. And I'm screaming like I was being murdered.
I've never heard him scream that way. I know something's wrong. This is not, I've hit my thumb with a hammer scream. This is bad. And I just freeze. I'm processing. What just happened? What's wrong?
It happened so quick, and he was not letting go. I'm in a fight now.
What's the matter?
She didn't know I'm in a fight. I didn't have time to tell her that. I'm getting bit by a gator. Hold on, honey, right there. I didn't, no. I yelled at Tess to stay away.
Stay back! Stay back!
And the reason why, she was not an experienced hunter. and she's not that good of a shot. But the number one reason, I'm afraid there's a nest there, and I did not want her getting bit.
But James's fear of an alligator nest is unfounded this late in the fall.
During this time of the year, it's past alligator nesting season. It's not that mama alligator is protecting her babies. She's now pretty much left the nest, and those baby alligators are by themselves. It's very possible that the palmetto bush was able to hide possibly the prey that this alligator may have been protecting.
When he didn't want to let go, I know he wanted that leg, and he's crushing, and I hear it popping and popping. He severed all the nerves in my leg. That's where the electricity shock was. It was from all the nerves he severed. So he hit me hard enough to rip the nerves the first bite, and now he's getting into the bone. He just slowly crushed, like a vice. Then I'm on his tongue, and he's like, ah. You know, the growl is there. His eyes are there looking right up at me. And then he's like just scooting back with me, and I'm like, oh, no. And I had this gun on my shoulder. But now I'm fighting with him and grabbing the gun. And I started hitting him to enough where that gun started breaking apart. I hit him in the nose, I hit him in the top of the head, hit him in the eye a few times. At the time, I didn't think I was doing anything because he was just going back and forth. It didn't make a difference. And of course, I got blood now running down in his mouth. When your whole leg is inside an animal, you are becoming part of the food chain. Here I am eating the food that God's created and taking off this earth. Now I'm becoming his prey. He was looking at me as a food source, to be eaten alive.
I was aware that they were in the United States. I know they've been moving up through Brazil over the years, part of some crazy experiment. Nature can be treacherous. I never in my life thought that I would live to tell about it.
Orlando, Florida. Its mild winters and subtropical climate make it not just a popular vacation destination, but also a great spot for professionals to gather for conferences and corporate retreats, which is why Dr. Olivia Afuso and Dr. Dahia Bar Anderson have come here to attend an annual sports medicine conference.
I'm Olivia Afuso, and I'm an associate professor of epidemiology at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. I'm very passionate about spending time outside, and that has actually contributed to my work in physical activity with women.
It was through her work with women in fitness that Olivia built her friendship with Dahia.
I've known Dahia for, I don't know, maybe 15 years or so.
I can't remember when we first started talking and we started becoming friends, but when we did, we found out that we had a lot in common.
We bond over, engaging in physical activity with women. I'm more of a runner, and she really is an expert in yoga.
Then we started being roommates at our ACSM annual meetings, and so we would always see each other and reconnect at least once a year.
In May 2019, Olivia and Dahia meet up again for the American College of Sports Medicine's annual conference, along with 6,000 other sports medicine practitioners.
It's myself and Dahia and her mentoree, Scott.
It's the end of May in Orlando, and so the weather is beautiful.
Tropical kind of climate environment with lots of trees and plants and flowers.
After a long day of meetings, they head out for a casual dinner.
So as we were walking to dinner, I see two guys that are on a boom lift. It appeared that the two guys were changing the signs, like those banner signs that you would see in front of a convention center about whatever event is going on. At first, nothing seems out of the ordinary until I notice them sort of flailing, and then the screaming starts.
We all hear the workers screaming, and we look over and we see that they are kind of surrounded by these swarm of bees.
The swarm of bees just came out like a mushroom cloud around them. I've never seen that many bees. And they were immediately attacking the two guys that were on the lift. And of course, they were screaming.
As Olivia and her friends look on, the workers furiously try to protect themselves from the swarm of bees, but their efforts seem futile.
Over the left!
You could hear the terror in the voice.
It was horrific, the screaming.
There had to be thousands of bees. It was like an opaque mass, like of a cloud.
The honeybee, a small winged insect known for its unique social organization and honey production. The most common bee, the western honeybee, can live in hives of 80,000. They play a crucial role in pollination, and the female bees can deliver a painful venomous sting from a tiny barb on their lower abdomen. Dr. Juliana Rangel, associate professor of apiculture at Texas A&M University, has been studying honeybees since 2001.
Honeybees are insects in the order Hymenoptera. They are cousins to ants and wasps. Probably what Olivia is observing is a big honeybee swarm. A honeybee colony is considered a superorganism, a higher level entity that lives together as one unit. So when a worker is going to sting as a defense mechanism, that is the ultimate way in which they defend their colony. And of course, they die upon stinging. So when they sting, that's it. They lose their life, and they're willing to do so for the good of the colony.
They were very aggressive. They appeared to have been resting along the side of the pole, and when the guys were trying to change the sign, they probably just moved the sign that was there, and I think they disturbed the bees. They just descended from that pole and completely covered the guys within a matter of seconds, and I knew that they were in trouble.
When the lift workers are peeling off the banner, they are making the bees aggravated because they feel that they need to defend their resting site. And that's when the whole swarming and defensive behavior starts. When a colony is ready to reproduce, it issues a swarm, which is a smaller unit of bees with a queen that stops in a temporary place. They're defending that resting place. They feel threatened. They think that they're probably gonna get eaten or taken somewhere, and so they are definitely enacting the defensive behavior to take care of the queen and the rest of the colony.
Help! 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 Roll over!
Anyone who knows me knows that I went bonkers because we had two very different reactions. And I start backing away and going over to the left as far away from the bees as I can. Olivia, she runs towards the two guys.
I knew that I had to do something because if they did not get help quick, they were going to die. I know there's a limit to how many stings you can sustain before you die. And so I had to move as quickly as possible to try to get them some help, to try to get them out of the swarm of bees.
These bees definitely seem to be more aggressive than the normal, gentle honeybee, which leads me to suspect that they come from a specific lineage of bees that is more aggressive in general than others.
I was like, I have to do something. And so I noticed the police car on the side of the street, and I just immediately ran for help. I just tapped on the window, and I'm like, you have to call an ambulance right now. We gotta get those guys down. We gotta get them down. And then I turn around and I run back over to the lift. The guy is trying to use the controls to come down from the lift. As the lift is coming down, I can see that they're completely covered with bees. Even though they have their shirts over their heads, the bees are still attacking them through their shirts and on their hands and just everywhere. And they're screaming bloody murder.
Help! Help!
According to venom scientist Christy Wilcox, the pain caused by venom is by design.
Bee venom's primary purpose is to cause pain. So once you've been stung by a bee, there is a gland full of venom, and that whole system actually rips out of the bee and stays inside of you. And that muscle that pumps the venom will keep pumping, sticking more and more venom through that needle into your body. So one bee sting tends to be fairly harmless. When you have hundreds upon hundreds of bee stings, all of a sudden you're talking about a very different dose of venom. The danger when you have hundreds and hundreds of stings is that you have this massive release of histamine, and that can cause your throat to close, your heart to stop, all sorts of very life-threatening things.
I could see that there was a fire extinguisher, and I said to myself, I have to be able to do something with that. As I try to get the fire extinguisher, I'm immediately covered by bees. They are stinging my head, my arms, my hands, my legs, my feet, probably upwards of 100 stings. I was just on fire.
Now, when I looked at his mouth open, and my foot was down in it, and his mouth was past my knee, I knew there was a problem, a major one, because he started pulling me back and starting to do a roll.
The death roll is very famous amongst crocodilians in regards of dismembering prey. So an alligator would latch on to a piece of prey, and the force of the death roll, it actually just comes from the snout. And the force generated from the turn of the snout, it allows the alligator to dismember prey that is much larger than the alligator itself. But it's not just about dismembering or, in a sense, taking chunks out of prey, but they'll also use it as a way to injure an opponent so that they could get away or possibly win a fight.
He's screaming very loud. He's making a blood-curdling scream.
Stay back!
Get back. I'm telling you, get back. What happened? What's wrong?
I rolled with him twice. It felt like hours, but it wasn't. It was only a few minutes, and then I hit him again. He let go, and that was my break. It's like, oh, I knew it was bad because I just feel the warmth of the blood run down my leg into my boot. In the right side of my leg, I couldn't feel. Well, I knew if I did not turn and kick my leg, I'm a dead man. So I turned around and ripped my belt off, dropped my gun, and started tightening up my leg. And he came right up from behind me and grabbed me on the back of the leg. The second time, now I can't see him. That was my mistake. I should never turn my back.
Turning your back to a predator is a submissive position. And so that alligator likely came back for him just to say, I have weakened my opponent. My opponent is submissive, but I'm gonna go one more time to let him know that I am the winner in this particular battle.
Then when he did that, I said, that's it. I'm just gonna shoot him. And I was gonna either blow my leg off or blow him away with my leg in it. I didn't care.
In an effort to kill the alligator and minimize damage to his leg, James shoves the gun barrel as far into the alligator's mouth as he can.
I stuck the barrel inside his mouth, and all of a sudden, he let go and he took off.
James using his rifle and pounding against the back of the throat most likely made the alligator release. In the back of a crocodilian's throat is a sensitive area called the palatal valve. It prevents water from going in while swimming around or hunting. The alligators would definitely not want that to be damaged because that would impact its ability to be able to successfully hunt, especially underwater when it's trying to catch fish or trying to catch turtle.
He's backing up to get out of that area, and then he's telling me, give me your belt. I need your belt. And I'm dumping the gear. I'm throwing my rifle down. I'm getting this belt, and then he's tying the belt around his leg, and he's like, call 911.
Call 911. And she knew it was bad because she heard me screaming, and she just lost it. I had to grab her, snap her out of it, and said, we gotta pay attention, or we're gonna lose my life here.
Let's get on that phone, please.
I I made a couple attempts to get 911. I couldn't. The cell service there was very spotty.
And she goes, there's no signal. I said, I know. Just keep calling it. Keep calling it. I was in a cypress area covered with trees, canopy of trees. You're not getting out like that. But there is no open area either. And I knew I had to get to where we could be spotted. That was my number one.
So we start walking and beeline it through the water.
And we're walking, she's calling and calling. We get the signal to the signal. And it's spotty because we're on the Martin County line and Palm Beach County line.
I was scared because now the water is up to my knees and it's going into my boots. And I know what's in this water. There's the alligators and there's rattlesnakes and water moccasins, things that'll get you. And he's bleeding. So when you're bleeding and there are hungry animals, the chances are higher that something else is now going to happen.
Back in Orlando, Dr. Olivia Afuso tries to save 2 workers being attacked by an aggressive swarm of bees. She grabs a fire extinguisher to spray the bees off the men. But now she's under attack and the pain is intense.
So I've been stung before. So it's kind of like, you know, going to get a needle at the doctor. But now imagine hundreds of needles at once. And I just focus my mind and stay on the task at hand. I couldn't leave them. And I got it out. And I took the fire extinguisher, I pulled the pin, and I turned it on the guys, trying to spray them so that they could escape from the bees to be able to get out.
When Olivia grabbed that fire extinguisher, what she didn't know is that she was doing something similar to the effects of the smoker that we use in beekeeping. What the smoke is doing is dissipating the release of the alarm pheromone. So it's calming the bees down and it's confusing them because it is mixing the smell of the smoke with the smell of the alarm pheromones. Only she didn't know that this was only a temporary fix.
And then I ran away from the bucket, turned around, closed my eyes.
She turns the fire extinguisher on herself and sprays herself in the face and all over. And it's a blur. It's a blur of like all of this that's going on.
And then I dropped the fire extinguisher right there on the sidewalk and I run to the convention center. And that's when my friend Dahia came to save me. And she starts swatting my head to get the bees off of me.
I just start trying to fan them away, and I know I'm smacking her in the head. The bees are getting angrier and angrier because we're hitting them and swatting them.
That actually aggravates the bees more. Fast movements and high contrast of movements actually gets them very aggravated and they want to sting at a faster rate.
They're still swarming around. My thought is we have to get these bees off of Olivia, and we need to get out of here.
After surviving an alligator attack, James Boyce and his wife Teresa struggle through the dense growth of the J.W. Corbett Wildlife Preserve. James, losing blood rapidly, is too weak to go any further.
Finally, I get through to 911.
I'm in J.W. Corbett. My husband just got bit really bad in the leg by an alligator.
And because we're on the borderline of these 2 management areas, they're 2 different counties. And I was afraid because it took so long to get through. Please don't transfer me.
Hang on one second, ma'am. Are you in Dupuis or Corbett? Because those are 2 different counties.
Corbett.
Okay. All right, stay on the line. I got to transfer you to Palm Beach County. Stay on the line. Don't hang up.
You cannot. Please don't transfer me.
I'm like, can I just get anybody, somebody to come and help us?
After a few minutes, Teresa is finally able to relay their approximate location. Operators immediately dispatch a helicopter rescue.
The 911 operator wanted me to look and verify the amount of blood. And he asked me to lift his leg up, elevate his leg. I pick up his leg to put it up over my knees, and the blood just starts pouring out of his boot. And I'm like, this is bad.
I looked down at my leg, and I could see bone and fat and veins and blood just squirting out.
And then he looks at me and he goes, this is it. You know that, right? So he's saying goodbye to me, and he's talking to me. And I'm not listening. I refused. I wasn't going to let him die. I just wasn't.
I know my wife, and I'd see back her mind look through her eyes. She kept telling me I wasn't going to die, but she thought I was. And I knew too. I thought so too. Because I do have a blood condition, and it's hemochromatosis. And it's very rare. The blood count on your platelets is major, and mine normally is at 110. The person's normal is 275, 350. So if I lose a lot of blood, my body can't make it up. And she's on the phone, and people couldn't find us, we lose them, and I said, the hell with it. I said, get on the phone right now, call the boys. I just want to make sure everybody knew how much I loved them, because it gets real. You got anything to say to her, say it now. I called, I think it was Christopher, and I said, look, man, I got bit by a gator, and he thought I was joking. I said, shut up and listen. I don't know what's gonna happen. I said, I love you, said my goodbyes to him. They gotta go. Call the next one.
The kids is hard for me. He says, I love you. I'm proud of you. You're gonna grow up to be a great person. I want you to live your life. I want you to do the things you want to do. And then he's done.
Once I got that out, the rest is easy. I mean, you're already going out because you're passing out, you're losing all your blood. There's no help in sight. So that you got that work for you, then you just say, well, I'm just tired. You accept it, and I did, 100%. Said, I'm gonna accept the death. I was ready to go then.
An ambulance takes the lift workers to the hospital, but Olivia is left with over 100 stings from her rescue effort. Her friends Dahia and Scott are able to get her into the safety of the convention center.
I sat down in a chair to wait on medical assistance. I start to look down at my arm, and I just see all of these little stingers on my arm. And we start picking them out, at least the immediate ones that they see in my face and on my arm, because the bees had stung me here in my face, and there were stingers still there.
When Dahia goes and plucks the stingers out, that in theory is a good idea depending on how quickly you're doing it, because it takes about 20 to 30 seconds for the full contents of the venom gland to be injected into the flesh. Depending on how long Dahia took to get rid of the stingers, it may or may not have helped.
And now that the adrenaline was starting to come down from what I had done, then the pain started to come with it. I just felt burning. After, the stingers were removed, I just felt like I was on fire.
Her skin isn't really dark, right? And so you could see the redness starting to appear on her arms and on her neck. But she wasn't complaining, she wasn't yelling, she wasn't moaning. And so I think we all underestimated how much in pain she was and how urgent she needed care.
And my blood pressure started climbing really high. And I've never had high blood pressure in my life.
This is serious now, and I'm scared. He's laying down, he's done. And then I hear a helicopter, and I get up, and I'm looking, and here it comes. And it's going, and it's circling, and it looks like it's coming, and I'm screaming, here. It turns, and it goes the other way. I'm on with 911 and telling them, tell him to turn around. Tell him to turn around. Tell him to come back. He went the wrong way. Tell him to bang a left. I'm heartbroken. That was our last chance.
It's like looking for a needle in a haystack. I don't care. You could have orange. You can have a lightning rod. You can have what you want. They can't find you.
So my husband says we should shoot shots into the ground. Somebody could hear us. So I put the shells in the gun.
She was firing it like a champ.
And I'm screaming, help, help. Here comes the helicopter again. And I'm like, okay, maybe they'll see us. As the helicopter's coming, here comes the swamp buggy.
Teresa's gunshots alert fellow hunters, Danny McClellan and his family.
I'm just like, thank God. Just thank God. There's somebody here, there's somebody here. And the lady that was with them came right to me and she just grabbed me. And I fell to the ground. So Danny runs back to his buggy and grabs some zip ties. Our tourniquet, it was wet, it was stretched, it wasn't holding. They just zip tie his leg.
Woke up to Danny McCullen and his family, zip tying my legs with the AC zip ties. They use them out there for tying up pigs. It didn't stop it. Instead of squirting out 6 inches, it's just running down my leg now. This is losing so much blood. You start getting shivers. I was going into shock.
So we're going through the woods and I'm holding my hand and trying not to get hit by the trees and I'm just praying.
Finally, they reach a clearing where a helicopter can land.
Of course, I'm passing in and out. It felt like a long ride to the helicopter. We got in it, it's raining, it's windy. I remember going up and I said, you know what? Looking at my wife, I said, if I don't die here, I'm gonna die in this helicopter. The pilot was like, this is bad weather. And I'm like, yep, this is it. And we're gonna die. This is meant to be.
As Olivia suffers the effects of 100+ bee stings, outside the convention center, the swarm of bees attacks.
There were tons of other people coming from the conference as well, and they were stung. And many of them ran into the building with us.
It was insane. One lady, she was walking through and the bees attacked her. And so she, is trying to fan them. And so she runs to try to get indoors. It was a lot going on.
EMTs quickly arrive, but with the chaos going on around her, Olivia must wait to receive medical attention.
You have the security guard who's saying, I'm having difficulty breathing. And then you have the other lady who says, I'm allergic to bees. I could die from a bee sting. And so she was in triage first, right? They were dealing with the other two.
I was the one that sustained the most stings, but they were attending to other people. And I understand that, but every time the wave of fire came to me, I became a little less understanding. I just had to endure.
When a bee stings a person, she can either have an allergic reaction or a toxic reaction. The allergic reaction is the one that most people have, which is localized swelling, a little bit of pain, redness around the area, and potentially can last for a few days. For some people, one or a few stings of a honeybee can cause a toxic reaction that can lead to anaphylactic shock.
And then they started with Olivia and they hooked her up to take her pulse and check her blood pressure. And her blood pressure was really high. The upper 150s over 90. It was really, really high. It started to dawn on me, I think, at that point in time, she was in a lot of pain.
Requiring additional medical aid, Olivia is rushed to the nearest hospital.
I am still on fire. My head is killing me. I'm in extreme pain. I'm hyperventilating. My blood pressure is going up, and I'm just wanting something for this pain. I felt like I was going to die. I felt something crawling in my hair, and I'm like, is there a bee in my hair? So I reach up there and I feel something moving. And so then I grab that part of my hair and I hold it and I throw it to the floor. And sure enough, there was a bee and it was still alive. The assistant quickly used one of those little cups, specimen cups, and he grabs it and twists it and he runs out with it and he's showing all the people at the nurse's station. Eventually, the nurse comes in, she hooks up the IV, she has the 3 different combinations of medication, and she's going to administer them. One is like Benadryl, another is like an anti-inflammatory. That's good. And then the third one is a stomach medication that they use as a secondary antihistamine. As soon as she injects that, I started vomiting everywhere. And I couldn't believe that I had anything to vomit. Remember, I never made it to dinner.
After the medication, Olivia is discharged and walks back to the hotel with Dahia.
The next day, all right, she's an epidemiologist, and we're investigators, and so she wanted to investigate the scene. And so she goes back. She was walking around with the bee that was taken out of her hair.
I run into the other person who had been stung, and she said to me that one of the exhibitors is a beekeeper who is very familiar with the bees.
And so she pulls it out, and the guy identifies it for her.
And he said those were Africanized killer bees.
Based on all of these facts, the fact that there were so many stings happening at the same time, the fact that there was a very high amount of alarm pheromone being released and a very wide active space leads me to believe that these bees were Africanized.
Africanized honeybees, often called killer bees, are a hybrid of European and African descent. Bred in Brazil to increase honey production, the Africanized honeybee is known to be more aggressively defensive and has caused over 1,000 human deaths.
If you are unlucky enough to get one of these aggressive swarms of bees riled up, what you need to do is run as fast as you can and seek shelter. Unfortunately, what happened to these workers was unavoidable because they were unable to move from the boom, and the bees will continue to sting. There are a few stinging deaths every year, most likely because the person was unable to move. What Olivia did was heroic, and she helped save the lives of 2 people.
I probably won't run towards danger unless I know I can do something. If I'm ever in a dangerous situation, when I am not equipped to do something about it, then I'm with someone who is equipped.
The main thing I learned from this whole experience is that I am far stronger than I probably give myself credit for. And probably also it confirms that I really do have a high pain tolerance.
Back in Palm Beach, James Boyce fights to survive the 45-minute flight to the hospital. Paramedics give medication for the pain, but the wounds to his leg are extensive.
It was mangled. It was just a mangled piece of meat. All this water got into it, and dirty water and infection, and it just hanging.
From the time he was bit to the time we arrived and they got him into the trauma room, it was close to 3 hours.
And they had a team of doctors and nurses. When they cut all my clothes off, the doctor himself, he stuck his 4 fingers in that hole to see how deep it went, and it would disappear. And I screamed in pain. He'd be like, give that man a shot of morphine. Let's get him in surgery.
Because of James's hemochromatosis, he's at a much higher risk for severe complications. A normal platelet count ranges from 275 to 350. James's is dangerously low.
We looked at the blood work. I was down to 50. If you're down to 45, 40, you start bleeding out of every orifice. Your nose, your eyes, your mouth, then you die. And it was getting to that point.
I get in the door, I'm greeted with the sheriff's department and the game wardens. They have a gator now that's bitten a human. In most instances, they have to remove that animal from the wild. It's now considered even more dangerous than it already is. And by the time I get into the room, they're wheeling him out. So I never truly knew how bad it was until they pulled him out of surgery.
Despite the extensive damage to his leg, it could have been a lot worse.
The boot did save my leg, and it's made for snakes. Snake proof. When he bit on top of my leg, he bit high, just enough where he covered the top of that boot, too. When he let go, he ripped the top of the boot, and then he got the bottom of the boot, too. But if it wasn't for that Kevlar boot, he would have had 100% control of that leg, and I would have lost it. And it's definitely saved me the second bite, because the second bite, he got the back of my leg where the calf was.
So if you're going out hunting, let's say out in the swamps, one, it is good to have another person with you. So James' wife was 10 feet behind. It's possible if she was closer to James, this attack may not have happened because the alligator's like, oh no, 2 against 1, not gonna happen. The other thing that James could have done is if there was a long stick, a long pole, is just to kind of poke around in front of him. So if he did scare something, something's gonna latch at the pole and not necessarily latch at his leg.
I almost lost my husband. And I almost lost the father of my kids. They need him.
People ask, well, you know, were you scared of dying? No, I wasn't. It's funny how you make peace real quick. Then you start really thinking about, you know, your family, and family is really what you got. And it made me and my wife a lot closer, that's for sure.
I knew James is really good under pressure. I just didn't ever know how good.
She was stronger than I thought she would be. That's the truth. So it was a test. That's for sure. It was a test on both sides, but she fared well, apparently. I mean, we're both out. You know, we're both alive. So kudos, I guess.
10 days after James gets the all clear from his doctors, with some help from his sons, he is back out hunting. But this time he's better prepared and much more aware of the dangers.
My takeaway on this, if you're gonna go hunting in any area, swamp, make sure you know what's in there. Don't always expect them to be in the same spot or even in the same environment. Come prepared for the worst day of your life. That will save your life.
I think the whole situation with the bees is just a product of nature. We have to be adaptable the same way that the bees are trying to be adaptable. And so they just happen to stop on that pole. The guys just happen to not see them and disturb them. And so I don't blame the bees. I just felt really sorry for the guys who stumbled into them and were stung relentlessly, but I'm also very grateful that they survived. And I'm grateful that I could have offered whatever assistance that I was able to on that day.